Yeah. So one thing I noticed about when they were talking, they don't like each other. This Marshall and Richard.
Yeah, I think that that's pretty clear. I mean, I think in that he is not very liked by quite a number of scholars in the field, actually, like Hector Avalos and Matthew Ferguson, and even people like John Loftus and stuff like that. They've all kind of had run-ins with him and had to deal with like responses from him that mischaracterize them, which can be frustrating. I
Yeah.
know that Matthew Ferguson in particular has. Um, Matthew Ferguson is um, he's a PhD graduate student in California, I think Irvine, and he has had a couple of exchanges with Marshall through their respective blogs, and yeah, there seems to be a pattern going on, and I mean, I don't like to call people dishonest, but there is a bit of a pattern there of at least him saying things about them that misrepresents them.
So anybody listening on the live stream, Cam and I just thought we'd hang out tonight and talk about. Is this a podcast or a Christian? It's Premier Christian Radio. Richard Carrier today, just hours ago, was talking to David Marshall about mythicism of Jesus, whether Jesus was a myth or not. And of course, Richard Carrier says, yes, Jesus is a myth, or the probabilities say that he was. And David Marshall basically say, no, of course not. Jesus is definitely a real person and said the things he said in the Gospels, and this is history written down in Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. And one thing I noticed just listening to it, first of all, the guy who the interviewer, the mediator, he was quite good.
Yeah, he was. I think his name is Justin Braley. Braley. Yeah, he's really good at sort of moderating the discussion.
Yeah, because I couldn't tell I literally could not tell if he was a theist, an atheist, whose side he was on. He was very down the road, down the middle of the road, adjudicating and keeping things on point. And he was very good at summarizing both sides. So, my overall thoughts on it was these two guys hate each other. So, if you guys want to listen to it for yourself, you can actually just feel the vitriol coming through the radio waves. And I'll post a link later. And I guess from Richard Carrier's point of view, David Marshall misrepresents him all the time and basically says, look, no one takes you seriously, Richard Carrier. You don't think Jesus actually existed, so no, you're just a goofball. And Richard Carrier's point back to Marshall is, you're not seriously taking my arguments, my evidence, the things I'm saying seriously. You're not even reading my books. You're not even understanding what I'm saying. Everything I'm talking about has been peer reviewed, and so it's
Yeah,
Go ahead,
and
Kevin.
I think one of the strongest things Carrier said was less about his book being peer reviewed and maybe less about, whether or not Marshall has properly read Carrier's books, Proving History and On the Historicity of Jesus, but more that Marshall seems to show a real lack of familiarity with the other peer-reviewed work, which is relevant to the case he's trying to make. For example, it sort of feels like he just goes blundering into the discussion about mystery religions without even really having any knowledge of, like why the criteria that Carrier thinks are relevant are also considered relevant by experts in mystery religions. It's quite strange. My fear, like I either sort of I came away from it wondering if Marshall either hadn't read the appropriate stuff or was deliberately lying about it. Like, I mean, the idea that he hasn't read it is, that almost saves him a bit, But if he has read it, then it seems like he's being, just completely deceitful about it.
One of the arguments that Marshall made on this radio podcast was something I hear often from Muslims, is that the Gospels don't read like myth. This is Marshall speaking. The Gospels don't read like myth. They read like this actually happened in history, and it's so unique compared to like anybody who just sits down, reads the Gospels for themselves, will very quickly understand that this Jesus guy was a unique figure in history, said things that no one else said, and it was almost an emotional appeal that you can just feel that this is true. Did you get that sense from Marshall, that that was his core argument?
It's not only a sense of feeling. My understanding is that of the 30 or so, I think it was up to 50 at one point, but of the 30 or so criteria he outlines in his book, which was part of the subject of this interview, this radio interview, of those criteria, many of them actually have that element to them. They are, focusing on unique and compelling aspects about the Christian message, and how Jesus perfectly plays into the belief in Christianity of the time in terms of how he, the position that he puts forward in the Gospels.
What I typically hear from Christians is, what's interesting, I hear two different versions. I've talked to Christians who say, yes, of course, Doug, there's similarities between Jesus and the myths. Like, God wouldn't take something foreign and introduce something foreign to a culture, to a people, that they would immediately reject. So of course you're going to find similarities between Jesus and other myths. I've heard Christians say that. In fact, even C.S. Lewis admits to that, when, I forget who he was talking to, but basically saying that, Jesus was similar to other myths of the time, but he was the true myth. He was the fulfillment of all the other myths. And but then I've talked to other Christians who say, no. The other myth stories in history are nowhere near similar to Christianity. They're just completely different, Doug. So I've heard both extremes. But Carrier's point is that you're not looking, when you're talking about similarities between Jesus and other figures in history who most Christians would say are myth, we're not talking about the purpose and the details of each story. We're talking about how they were constructed is similar. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think the methods the evidence of the methods that are used to construct the stories is what is, one of the most striking parallels between so here's a bit of an explanation of what myth is. And it's not like a, canonical explanation. It's not like, not necessarily the only perspective, but myth seems to be a category that actually spans genres. So one in biblical studies, one thing which has been a, frequently studied and written about thing is, what is the genre of the Gospels? with the idea that if we can identify what genre they belong to, it'll give us some information about whether or not they're historically reliable. Now, that effort makes part of the mistake of presupposing that falsehood can only exist within one type of genre. But the reality is instead that we find like markers of myth across many different genres in the ancient world. It's not exactly that like myth was isolated to one particular genre. So like it's not, we have historical biographies which are myth. In fact, you know, historical biographies that are about euhemerize, you know, deities. We have myth in romance novels. We have myth in stuff that is like outright fiction. We have you know, the same kind of markers. And one thing that you can identify that helps to identify myth is really unnatural coincidences within stories that play a literary role. So they play like a core, they play into like a core element of the story. Another one is like historical implausibilities. This can be either events that occur that are implausible, like, you know, in the Gospels, a good example would be the whole world darkness that occurs, or maybe implausibilities in how people act and behave. And we use these kind of elements in texts like Gospels to get a better idea about how the authors are composing them, whether or not they're composing them to tell a truth about like a symbolic truth, or whether or not they're actually reporting history. Other markers of myth are whether or not a historian, or sorry, whether or not an author makes any effort to deal with their sources. So do they identify their sources? Do they name them, or
Well,
do they
try
to?
I got a list, so I made notes. So this is what most, if not all, ancient historians, the criteria they use to determine whether something is a myth or not. Number one, they don't name their sources. They don't criticize their sources. In other words, here's two sources I could have used. I chose this one over another one. They don't, you know, sift through their sources. They don't compare or contrast one source with another source. They contain fabulous events, like miracle stories. They contain a storyline that leads to a climax that is built within the story narrative from beginning to end. They promote a religious belief with a central hero, and the story is told as if true, and they don't use the structure of telling of history as used in that time. In other words, it's different than a historical text that of that time you could compare. So those are, what did I say? 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 6 or 7 different criteria. And so what Richard Carrier is saying is that, look, the Gospels are anonymous. They don't name their sources. They don't criticize any other source.
Even when we know for a fact they were using sources, like in the case of Matthew, we know Matthew is using Mark, and same with Luke. We have good reason to suspect Luke was actually using both Mark and Matthew, but yet doesn't acknowledge this.
Yeah, like, and that's one thing that I never knew when I was a Christian is, you know, odds are the author of Matthew had Mark right in front of him opened while he was writing Matthew.
And it's not just low odds, or like, you know, say just over 50% or something like that. I mean, it's very difficult to explain the content of Matthew without the hypothesis that he is copying directly from Mark.
And so the Gospels they're anonymous, they don't name their sources. Of course, Christians say, well, the source is God. But they don't claim to be eyewitness accounts. In fact, Cam and I were talking about this the other day of compiling a list of Christian historians who they themselves say that the Gospels are not eyewitness accounts. We're working on that. I would love to have a website where Christians could go and see Christian historians. We're not talking about those evil secular historians. We're talking about true Christian historians who they themselves say, no, I'm sorry, my fellow Christian friends, I don't think these are eyewitness accounts. And so because they're not going to listen to Cam, and they're not going to listen to us. We're fallen, dark side creatures. But they might listen. They might listen to a Christian historian who says, "No, they're not written by eyewitnesses." And then the Gospels do contain fabulous events. So I want to try a little experiment here. Gandhi. Gandhi's a great person to use. So I'm going to put up a picture of Gandhi. And I want you to focus in on his picture. And then I'm going to read something. So I want you to listen to what I'm going to read and picture Gandhi either saying it or doing it. Let's see. So the sky tears open and a magical voice booms, and Gandhi hears it from heaven. And angels bring Gandhi food. Gandhi flies through the air with Satan and observes the whole world from a mountaintop. Gandhi withers a fig tree out of season. Gandhi drowns 2,000 pigs by casting spirits into them. And Gandhi convinces several people to abandon their careers and families and follow him as disciples after showing up out of nowhere, doing nothing, and uttering just a couple of sentences. Gandhi clears a busy temple single-handedly, without any weapons and without anyone laying a finger on him. Because of
a huge temple, I might add.
Yeah. Because of Gandhi, the sun goes out for 3 hours. And because of Gandhi, an 80-foot temple curtain magically tears completely in two. And because of Gandhi, hordes of dead people come out of the tombs and start walking around Jerusalem. Gandhi has many conversations with demons. Gandhi walks on water. Gandhi commands the weather. And Gandhi magically conjures hundreds of fish and loaves of bread. Gandhi also heals amputated ears. Now, Christians, if you're hearing this, and if this all was written down in a book about Gandhi, would you believe it? Would you just automatically say, hey, yeah, this could be historical? Yeah, let's look into this more. Like, maybe Gandhi did all these things. Would your default position be that what I just said about Gandhi is true? Or would you say, okay, maybe it's true, but I doubt it. Maybe it could be true, but it sure sounds pretty fairy tale-ish to me. And I think this is what a lot of Christians miss, is that just by putting up the picture of Gandhi here, focusing on Gandhi's face, and then attributing all these things to Gandhi, it's very easy for the Christian to say, oh yeah, I would question that if I read that about Gandhi. But now change that picture to Jesus, the European Jesus that everybody sees. Then it becomes, oh yeah, very historical, very possibly true. I don't know. Do you think that will have any impact, Cam?
I don't know. I don't think so. It's a good thought experiment, though.
Yeah, well, if any Christian now watches this later, I'd be interested to know what they think of what I just did.
Yeah, so something that came up in the debate or discussion between Carrier and Marshall was the idea of a naturalistic bias of historians, and this idea that the only reason for the rejection of miraculous stories in the Gospels is through a philosophical bias that scholars like Carrier and Ehrman have against these miracle stories, and that they have no justified reason in not being compelled to believe them other than their naturalistic bias. Now, you've probably heard this come up a number of times. They didn't really address it in the discussion because it brings a whole bunch of other issues to the table that would have consumed more of the radio show than the host obviously wanted. But it's something I've heard lots of times, and I think it's a really unfounded charge. What do you think about that, Doug?
I think we are rabid, materialist, fundamentalists. That's what James White called me. I think what I just did with Gandhi kind of speaks to that. It's if you can just for a second take your world belief, your worldview, and shelve it, just stick it in a shelf, and then observe the texts like for what it is, for what we have. If you knew nothing about Christianity, if you could wipe your brain clear of Christianity and just read the Gospels for the first time, even if you believe in God, you could still believe in a God or gods. But if you just read the Gospels for the very first time, like you'd never heard it at all, I don't think you would say automatically, oh, yeah, this happened in history. So I think if whether you're an atheist or a Christian or whatever, if you just can, what's the line, a veil of ignorance, approach it from a veil of ignorance and just read it for what it is. I think the point that Carrier is making with myths contain fabulous events, I think if you can have that veil of ignorance, I think it's very easy to see that there's fabulous events in the Gospels that you would not assume are historical.
And it's not so much, we're often charged with not allowing for the possibility of miracle. And in my worldview, that's not the case. I mean, I'm primarily concerned with what evidence there is for such propositions, not a dogmatic commitment to some kind of metaphysics. And so if there were compelling evidence for, a miracle claim, I would believe it. The difficulty is that simply a claim in a text generally can't meet the kind of requirement of evidence that miracles must have in order to overcome the general fact that they don't usually occur. People don't usually rise from the dead after 3 days. People don't usually rise out of their graves and walk around the streets, and those aren't typical occurrences. They are rare, extremely rare, or have never occurred.
I gotta correct someone in the chat here. Ocean, we're not talking about whether Jesus is historic or not. We're talking about the myth of Christianity right now, which is related.
Yeah.
But we're not here. And this discussion between Carrier and Marshall that happened this afternoon was not whether Jesus existed or not. It's whether.
Well, part of it was meant to be that, but it ended up being more of a discussion about whether or not myth exists in the Gospels.
Right. So that was the bigger point to be made. So there very well could have been a guy named Jesus, but still Christianity could still have been legendized or mythicized or parts of it.
Yeah. So, Ocean is right. That is the title, but the content of the debate ended up being mostly about whether or not the Gospels contain myth about Jesus. And the reason for that is because Marshall actually claims that effectively all of the stories about Jesus in the Gospel are true. and so he's on like a very, very like Christian side of the fence with that, and not very engaged with the types of things that secular historians are discussing. Now, so my personal opinion on it is that the Gospels pretty much like aren't evidence for or against Jesus having existed. I think that they could exist as they are, whether he did or not. I think what's more interesting is to look at the epistles, and in particular the epistles of Paul, and other facts that are relevant to the background of the origins of Christianity. Yeah.
So there's a lot of errors that people bandy about on Jesus is similar to such and such, like Mithras, or what are some other ones?
Horus is one that people claim. But those parallels are generally overblown. But there are relevant parallels. Like there were...
But those are the bad ones. Right?
Yeah, those are the bad ones. And those are the ones that, good historians should, make an effort to distance themselves from.
But let's talk about the good ones, the ones that are have more parallels. And this is the problem I'm just going to state the objection to it outright from Christians that I've heard, is that, oh yeah, there's some similarities, Doug, but there's vast differences, so you can't say that, you can't use them. And noted that there are differences between the other rising and dying gods, but that would be expected. You would expect different religions to have differences. But the point is, and the point that I think Carrier is making, is that the Jews came late to the game. They were way behind the curve when it came to the rising and dying God concept. And Carrier's point is he uses four main ones, starting with the Sumerian about 1,500 years before Jesus. The Sumerian goddess, how do you pronounce it? Inanna. So now get this. She died. She went into some version of hell, was killed there for 3 days. This is found on Egyptian Sumerian tablets, and then came back to life. Dionysus is the Greek god, the Greek version of a dying rising god. Osiris is is another Egyptian god. Oh no, the first Egyptian god, dying and rising. Inanna was a Sumerian, and Adonis is another one. So the whole concept of
Adonis,
yeah, that's one Richard Carrier mentions. Assyrian Turk type god. So we have this pattern throughout history going from about 2000 BC or 1500 BC all the way up to 600 BC of these either gods or demigods going through some type of struggle, dying, and then coming back to life for some purpose. And usually the purpose was for some type of greater good for whoever believed in these gods. It wasn't in vain. It wasn't just for kicks and giggles.
Victory over death in some kind of manner.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and they often, not all, but one of the other common features is that they go through some kind of a passion or a struggle.
Yeah. So
the difficulty here, though, is that I think a lot of Christians would they'd go away and they would look to the primary evidence about, well, maybe they wouldn't even do that, but they'd go and read something at least about these figures, and they very quickly fall prey to I don't know quite what to describe it as, but it's like a fallacy of uniqueness. It's this
Yeah.
idea that, like, because they have differences, they're no longer relevant parallels to each other. But the thing is that within syncretism, the syncretistic practices and cultural diffusion that we know has produced many religions, we don't expect there to be the exact carbon copy clone of from religion to religion. They're often formed out of unconsciously through cultural diffusion out of existing gods and existing ideas and existing practices within their local religion. And one of Carrier's points is that, this is no different for Christianity. It's very much a combination of very Jewish ideas and Hellenistic ideas, and it's not expected to be exactly the same as God's worship before Jesus Christ. Instead, it has its own unique differences, but it shares commonalities too.
Yeah. Something else Carrier said was some similarities between these other gods and Jesus was this concept of baptism, some type of washing, and not only for the living, but for the dead. And a lot of Christians don't realize this, but baptism of the dead is in the, where is it? Is it in Paul's letters or in the Gospels? Paul's letters. There's reference to the baptism for the dead. And all these type dying, rising gods have this mystery about them, like almost like it's an irony of not understanding something, but there's a greater good to come. Sacred meals. There's often some ritual having to do with food. That's another thing that
which isn't surprising at all.
Well, no, it's very natural, right? It's
when you're congregating, people eat. Like, it's just sort of, and so those things. But it's more that the meal is of some kind of important symbolic.
Right, but the whole concept of communion in Christianity is not unique. In other words, in that sense, and then what you've already said, that these saviors are usually a son or daughter of a god. They all undergo some sort of suffering. The suffering leads to victory and death, and then that death leads to some type of salvation. Now, it might not be in a heaven type salvation, but some type of good thing that will happen to them.
And sometimes it is like some kind of heaven or resurrection. Just, it might have different conceptual trappings, but a commonality.
Well, what baffles me now is looking at the Gospels now as a non-believer. It just seems so clear, but to the believer, it just seems so ludicrous of how, like, I can see writings in the Old Testament used to actually create the New Testament without much or any of it actually happening. And for the Christian to hear that, they're just like, how stupid and ludicrous is that comment, Doug? Like, this is history unfolding, and it was fulfilled prophecy and all these things. But yet you can just read for yourself these prophecies in the Old Testament and find them in the New Testament. And some of them are just wrong. I mean, they got the prophecy wrong. Like, for example, the one donkey or two donkeys, one colt or two colts riding into Jerusalem. I think, is it Matthew and Luke mix it up?
Matthew has two. Mark had one.
Yeah. And so that you can tell the authors misinterpreted or had a difference in the interpretation of Zechariah 9:9. And you can read things in the Psalms. Is it Psalm 22, 23? That is found exactly word for word in Mark. And so it doesn't take much of an imagination to say that the Old Testament was basically I wouldn't call it a prequel, but it was the screenplay basis for the new screenplay, the Gospels.
Yeah. Ocean made mention of the fact in the comments about how Osiris is reassembled by, is it Isis, I think? And he doesn't come back to life. But here's the thing, though, is that, like, yes, some accounts of Osiris have that claim, but my understanding, and I have to admit that I haven't actually read the primary source, but my understanding is that there is that there were, and this is prior to Christianity, multiple Osiris cults, and some Osiris cults actually believed that Osiris did come back to life, not just was simply reassembled in some kind of hobbled together fashion.
Yeah, and I think he got a gold penis, if I remember correctly, a golden penis.
Yeah, because I mean, this goes back to, again, as well, that, like, we don't. Sometimes atheistic scholars, or, like, just internet bloggers or whatever, will make more of the parallels than what there really are, in that they'll say that they are, like, exactly the same or things like this, but that isn't really required. Like there's no point in stretching the evidence to say that it's something that it isn't. Like, it's not the claim that the conception of resurrection among these different religions was identical. And sometimes there have been some, like, pretty in-depth scholarly works where they restrict the definition of resurrection so tightly that they then point to the evidence and go, hey, look, there is no parallel between the concept of resurrection as found in the Gospels and the concept of resurrection elsewhere found in the ancient milieu. Instead, but without realizing that, like, they're almost arbitrarily restricting the definition. Which I think is irrational.
I try to figure the most common sense way to explain why I think even the concept of the Gospels being written by eyewitnesses describing history is kind of a low probability event. And this is an actual peer-reviewed, what do you call it? What the insurance companies use. Basically, life expectancy based on third world today. So the guess is that people didn't live as long as the third world today, but even if you assume that they did, any gospel writer who was near the age of Jesus, who was around Jesus at that time, to live to the age of 65, which is the first gospel, 65 AD at the earliest, 17% chance that they'd be alive. So now you have a problem on your hands. That's Mark. Whoever wrote Mark has a 17% chance to even be alive at that time, to write Mark. Now, we're not even talking about Matthew, Luke, and John. John is like 80, 85 years after the fact at best. That's like a 1.5% chance to even be alive if John was an eyewitness and actually wrote John. So you take the fact that the low probability of even being alive, combine that with the fact that the literacy rate at that time was far below 10%. So now you're looking at the probability of being alive and being literate. Just based on those two facts alone, you wouldn't have to know anything else. You're looking like a 1 in 100 chance that these were written by eyewitnesses. Like 10% times 10%.
Yeah.
But
although, I mean, I think that I mean, I don't want to appeal to authority, but the reality is within New Testament or historical scholarship, um, there's a pretty darn strong consensus that none of the Gospels were written by eyewitnesses. Like, that's not a controversial conclusion. It's only
It
really
is to
debated
Christians.
among, yeah, it's only really debated among fundamentalists. So, like, yeah, and I mean, it's good to show the logic as to why it's unlikely. I mean,
Well,
let alone
yeah.
leaving aside the fact that none of them claim to be written by eyewitnesses and they're all anonymous, but
Yeah, and I guess
and they're all derivative. What everyone but Mark is derivative of the other. So, but
yeah, I guess most
yeah,
people in the chat listening to this would say, "Well, obviously, Doug, that it's an obvious point." But I am speaking, I guess, to the fundamentalists when I say that, and I'm trying to think of new ways to show, just common sense wise, why it's such a low probability that this was even written by who they think it was, and I don't know if it has any impact on them or not. But I tell you, just if I can raise doubt that the authors are who they think they are, just by bringing up life expectancy and literacy rates, maybe they will start questioning other things. Hopefully.
yeah.
But
Although it is an additional point there is Christians, from my understanding, don't believe that Mark was an eyewitness or even meant to have been an eyewitness. That's my understanding. Wasn't he like a companion of Peter or something like that?
yeah.
Yeah. Somebody just claimed none of the apostles spoke Greek.
That's Paul.
Well, if you are a Christian, that's kind of an odd claim.
He's not a Christian.
Okay, right. Paul was an apostle, spoke Greek, and if you believe that Peter wrote Peter, like First Peter, for example, then Peter also spoke Greek. I mean, I personally think that the apostles weren't eyewitnesses because I don't think that Jesus actually had a ministry. I think that people conflate the concept of apostles as discussed in the Pauline epistles. They conflate that with the word disciple. And I actually think that the apostles did know Greek. I think that they were Hellenized Jews.
What do you think of the argument that Marshall made that, I'm not sure, I forget if he made it today or if it was a previous time, that the miracles in the Gospels just seem more plausible than miracles you read in other ancient texts? That how did he put it? That they're more realistic miracles, whatever that means. Have you ever heard that one?
Well, I mean, if we charitably set aside the possible bias he might have, given that he's a Christian, like in assessing, the relative merits of these miracle accounts, maybe, but like the difficulty that Christians have is this conjunction. The conjunction of probabilities, the idea of adding more details onto a story intuitively can make the story seem more compelling because, it lines up more with the way that, reality really works, and that, there's always multiple details to an event. But when it comes to storytelling and when it comes to writing things down, the more details that you add about a story, the lower the probability of the whole thing being true through the conjunction of probabilities. And this is something that Christians in particular don't seem to understand about their ludicrous claim that the gospel's inerrant. Like, they don't seem to realize that the more details they add, the less probable the inerrancy claim is. Like, the fact that the Bible is so large is a large problem for them.
Yeah.
Even if we were like extremely generous and assume that the probability of every story, or each individual story in the Bible being true is like 99%, when you multiply all of those 99% together, you get a vanishingly small number.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to try to state facts. So if you think I'm not stating a fact, let me know. But throughout history, before Jesus, there was breeding between men and gods. There's precedent for gods having coitus with humans and producing either godly children, god sons, god daughters, or demigods. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So Jesus coming from a virgin mother and being conceived from the Holy Spirit, not unheard of. There's nothing new there.
Yeah, although they don't claim that there was really coitus, right? they kind of steer, like, because that's one of the products of modern, or sorry, I mean, I don't mean to say like actual modern. I mean like the Judaism that comes out of history. They tend to completely shy away from the anthropomorphization of Yahweh. So where once Yahweh was depicted as a person who could walk with Adam in the Garden of Eden and, have a struggle with Isaac or whoever it was and, do these kind of things, or, who was it? His bum was seen or something like that in one of the early stories. As a figure, he moves to like way less anthropomorphization, and so they didn't like to think of God as like coming down and fucking Mary.
Can you imagine if Joseph was in the room next door and he's like hearing this? Keep it down, God. I'll edit that out later so the Christians can watch this. Okay, so I just want to give some basic facts. So this whole concept of the gods and people breeding, not unheard of. Before Jesus.
Sorry, I just interrupt you here, but I do want to directly make a comment towards Ocean. Like, Ocean, I'm not quite sure if I understand the logic you're using, but you do realize that we expect there to be unique elements within Christianity, and like simply because there might be some kind of novel introduction in the religion doesn't make it more plausible. Like, it's not as if like something happening for the first time or a story being told about something happening for the first time makes it more likely. It makes it less likely because we have less evidence of it occurring in the past. Like, it's a problem for Christianity.
And the Christians I've talked to have conceded that point. I'll often ask them, they'll say Christianity is the only religion or only belief system that does X, fill in the blank for X. And then I will say, well, does that necessarily make it true? And the intelligent Christians will realize they can't say yes to that, because then other uniquenesses in other religions would possibly be true as well if uniqueness was a criteria for truth. So I think very few people will say uniqueness makes something true or makes it more likely to be true.
Ocean clarified he wasn't saying that, and so sorry if I implied that you were. I was just more trying to clarify to make sure that you weren't saying that, but it's good to hear that you didn't.
So I want to kind of wrap this up in a bow as far as the whole Jesus from the Christian perspective. No, Doug, Jesus is not a myth. I just want to state some facts for the record here. We have precedent before Jesus that God's bred with humans. Fun fact. We have precedent in history that these gods that were the result of the breeding of other gods and men or women went through some type of struggle, some type of suffering, and either came back to life or came back as something, another version of themselves or whatever.
And sometimes they do that on their own, or sometimes they do that with the help of their posse.
Right. So, so I'm breaking it down this way because I try and want to eliminate, well, Doug, these other myths are nowhere like Christianity. But so far, we're 2 for 2 here with the fact that breeding, breeding's the wrong word, immaculate conception of some sort, or just, some type of interaction between gods and humans to produce another god or demigod. And then that these gods go under...
Or son of God.
Yeah. And then these gods go under some type of struggle and they overcome it. That's called a passion. And that's what Jesus had to suffer in order to give people salvation. Same thing. And so that's fun fact number 2. Fun fact number 3 is it started about, at least, it could be 2,000 years before Jesus with the Sumerians. The Egyptians had their versions of this. The Greeks, the Syrians, they all had their gods that had these 2 parts that I just mentioned. The Jews were late to the party on this, and they needed their own version of this God coming down to humanity and going through a passion.
Well, that's not how I would phrase it. I wouldn't say that they needed it. I would more say that with the fact that there was diversity in Jewish belief in the first century, it becomes unsurprising that, such a syncretism would occur. Yeah. Like, it's like a natural combination, and we have examples of the syncretism occurring among other religions.
Now, okay, so now that we've set all that precedent, it's not surprising that Christianity was an offshoot of Judaism, and that at that time, first century, it's not surprising that it happened then. And because of the prophecies in Daniel, there were Jews at the time looking for the Messiah, capital M Messiah, this type of Savior God.
As Josephus indirectly documents.
Right. So now we have all the precedents set through other religions for this type of thing to happen. We have Daniel predicting when it would happen. So now we have people looking around for this to happen.
Well, a certain interpretation of
there's Jews, the hardcore Orthodox Jews don't believe that Daniel 9 is talking about a Messiah even, or with a capital M.
And the secular scholars think that the prediction had already occurred.
Right, exactly. So we now have the precedent, we now have the timing, and so I personally believe, and this is where I could be wrong, but I think that the writers of the Gospels put all those things together and made a passion play narrative. Now, here's what I'm uncertain about, whether it was actually based on a true charismatic guy that existed in history, that the story was based off of, or if it was basically all conjured up from, not conjured is the wrong word, but all based on the Old Testament and some Greek mythology, the Hellenization of the time. That I'm not clear about. I think I'm probably 60% believe that it is based on a real guy. And I think, Cam, I asked you this question, and I think you're probably 35-40% that it's not.
Yeah, maybe 50. I'm pretty. I mean, I would describe myself as agnostic. I personally don't think that the evidence bears out either case.
Yeah. So it's
and I think that there's a severe failing in historical method when trying to assess something on such what I consider compromised and poor evidence. one of the difficulties of assessing origins of Christianity is that we have a sect of Christianity that won out in what was effectively a competition between different versions of early Christianity. And the sect that won out really only preserved its own documentation. And in fact, we even have direct evidence that they expunged documentation that was against them or considered heresy. And this is, well documented in, books by Bart Ehrman, but also other scholars. So you could read Lost Christianities would be a good one to start with. So we have this kind of filtration effect where the evidence that survives for early Christianity just isn't really that great.
But Cam is the guy who gave me this great question to ask in my Durban video part 2. And the question is this for Christians. What would you expect the world to look like if what we're saying is true and that the Gospels are mostly fiction, at least, and that this guy named Jesus did not rise from the dead? What do you expect the world to look like? And that's a question I think we want Christians to really think about. Because if your answer is quick, odds are you're not thinking about it. Because I think the knee-jerk reaction Christians might have is, well, Christianity would not exist if Jesus did not rise from the dead. But really think about it and apply that question to other religions that you disagree with. And I think it becomes apparent that even if the story was false, I'm talking to the Christians now, even if Jesus did not rise from the dead, there is a very good chance Christianity would look no different today. In fact, zero difference. Look at Mormonism. Look at Hinduism. Look at any religion you want that you say is, as a Christian, categorically false. And yet it still exists today, still thrives. Islam is based on Judaism, but still, Christians would say it's a false religion. It's the fastest growing religion in the world, based on something that you Christians would say is a lie and heresy.
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
Well, you came up with it.
I shouldn't say that because I came up with it. Whoops. But I do forget that I came up with it. But I mean, it is very similar to questions we've asked before. But yeah, I think it's hard to get them to consider that really deeply, though. But at least if they do give a quick response and they do say, oh, well, it would look completely different, then you at least have a follow-up question to ask them, which is, if it would look completely different, why is it that these other religions are false then, considering they still exist?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant question, because it goes towards expectations. And if you can see it in other religions that they might not look any different, even if they're based on something false, then it forces them, I think, to view that on their own religion and say, well, Christianity could look exactly like the way it looks today and still be based on something false. I think it's a terrifying question for them.
Yeah.
Because the beauty of that question is it makes them imagine. Oh, now you're making me jealous. I have one beer left, and maybe I should go get it. But it really makes them imagine, okay, if Jesus did not rise from the dead, and yet we still have Christianity today, how could that have happened? So now they have to think through the logistics of how actually a religion can be created, sustained, grow based on a lie or based on partial lies. Like maybe some of it's true, maybe, but the core propositions though would have to be a lie. And they really have to think about, okay, what actually happened? What could have, what's another explanation of what could happen? The Bible says that the tomb was empty. What's another explanation for that? Maybe that there was no tomb at all? Maybe it just says that there was a tomb? Maybe if there was a man named Jesus, he was thrown into a pit, a common grave like all the other crucified people? So,
Yeah, I think if we could encourage people to consider other explanations, that would be a good first step. I know that Holly, my wife, one sort of crucial step for her in starting to change her mind was considering other hypotheses, because she sort of thought that if your belief explains something, if you could make your belief explain it, that was really all the due diligence you needed to do, because she didn't kind of realize that there could be multiple equally good explanations for something. And so therefore you always have to make the effort to come up with alternate ideas.
yeah. Falsification.
Hey, Tony.
Cam and I were brainstorming the other day on, odds are if a Christian is listening to this, that it's not going to change their mind one bit. It's going to have zero
That's
impact.
right.
It's going to have zero impact. Everything we said is totally a waste of time as far as the Christian listening. But what I think isn't a waste of time is, well, there's maybe some fence sitters that's not a waste of time. But what isn't a waste of time is finding people that these Christians respect and genuinely, sincerely have an open ear to. And finding that one little thing that is not a deal breaker, but it's still pretty serious, that they disagree with this person they respect, who's a well-known Christian, maybe a historian, an apologist, and say, oh, my whole conception of this was X, but this guy who I respect says Y. And if you can get them to see that what they thought they believed for years and years and years is not true, or maybe not true, and just shift them a little bit, then that starts the domino effect of, well, maybe what else did I get wrong? Or what's another explanation for this? What is something else I haven't considered? It gets the ball rolling, right? And
I'd like to think that, and that's dangerous, because if I like to think that, I should be extra skeptical of it.
right. And for me, it was I went. Now, this is so embarrassing, but I'm probably 28 years old when this happened, and I remember going into a church. And the pastor, get this, the pastor of the church made the claim that Adam and Eve never really existed in real life, or he questioned it at least. Now, I'm a fundamental Christian, and I'm hearing a guy behind a pulpit say that Adam and Eve might not have existed. That threw my world upside down. would never even conceived that a Christian pastor would say such things. And it wasn't until probably several years later that I actually understood why this pastor said such a thing. And even though I had a science background and I believed that the earth was billions of years old, I still had this concept that there was a literal Adam and Eve. I was a gap theorist or a gap theory guy. And so it just that one little thing, that Adam and Eve probably didn't exist in history, got the ball rolling, I think, early on. Yeah. So I think it's even though atheists probably don't impact Christians that much, I think the way we can impact them in terms of critical thinking is to find other Christians that they do respect, do have an ear for, and say, hey, here's a fellow Christian who disagrees with you on this. Can you help me out here? Like, why do you believe this when this other Christian believes that?
Yeah, and Doug was mentioning before, an effort that we might go to is to try to compile a list of these people who are, authoritative in some respect, on particular issues or particular areas of expertise, and share this list and try to help the fundamentalist folks get exposed to people that they otherwise respect, but that still disagree with them on some issue.
Yeah, I would love to compile a website, or on a website have a compiled list of all the Christian apologists who don't believe in a literal Adam and Eve, all the Christian historians who don't believe that the Gospels were written by eyewitnesses. And then whenever I'm having a conversation with a theist or a Christian and say, oh yeah, can you check out this guy? Because whenever you give a Christian a link that's from a non-Christian source, they're going to discard it. They might look at it, but they're not.
Depends who it is.
Yeah. But most
I
of
hate
them,
to generalize, but for the most part.
I have a broad brush down here somewhere, but but most of them are going to put their hands over their eyes.
Occam's broom too.
Yeah. But if there was a website where they had basically all the apologists and the historians who go against the grain, but still call themselves Christians, maybe they're more apt to listen, to see, to read, to hear.
Yeah. So one of these sites, or a site that does this quite well for evolution, is a site called biologos.org. So BIOLOGOS, like, bioword.org. Yeah, it's a good resource for Christians wanting to learn about evolution, in particular wanting to learn by people who they might respect. Like, Christians often will refer to authors like N.T. Wright, and he features on this website and that kind of thing.
Yeah, even with this flat earther I talked to the other day, those thoughts were going through my head. By the way, for all the people giving me grief about my talk with the flat earther, let me get this out. A lot of you wanted me to be harder on this guy, call him out on all these things that he said. Number one, his daughter was in the car with him. And I don't know if he was wearing earphones or not. So I'm not going to call him an idiot. I wouldn't have called him an idiot even if his daughter wasn't in there. But I'm definitely not going to do that if his daughter is right there. And I don't know how old she is. And number two, he would just dismiss me and the conversation would basically be over. But with the flat earther, I don't think it was totally useless because, and here's why. I believe he's a flat earther because he has found community in the flat earth society. He believes in the flat earth because of his holy scripture. So all these other reasons or evidences, you can throw them out the door. It's not what got him into the belief, and it's not what's going to get him out. Because I truly believe that what got him into this flat earth belief is community and his view of his holy book, the Book of Enoch or Genesis or whatever you want to call it.
I don't know about the community part. I suspect you're right, but I don't have any evidence of that.
Well, the reason why I say community is because of what Reed said to me last night. Like the epiphany light went off. that what was the quote? I should have wrote it down. I wrote it down to someone in the comments.
It was about like putting on beliefs like on like clothes and about signaling
No.
and
It's
social.
the craziness of a belief is not a bug. It's what was the word?
A feature.
It's a feature of the belief. So what makes you need that craziness in a belief in order to have that uniqueness, that thing that solidifies the community. And in a way, this crazier the belief, the more solid the community can be, because it's like everybody's against you except the in-group who also believes what I believe. So what's more crazy than believing in a flat earth? Well, I guess there's a lot of crazy things. But if you are a flat earther
I personally don't buy that. I mean, sorry.
You don't believe that there's a community of flat earthers, that kind of the camaraderie?
Oh, no. I certainly believe that, but it's more, I don't think that the beliefs are crazy because, it serves as an identifying marker for, a community. Like, I think that, like, for the most part, the beliefs are crazy because people have broken epistemologies as well as other things. Like, I don't think, and this is why, I shouldn't be criticizing Reed without him being here, but this is why I struggle with these types of explanations is, it doesn't have to be the case that there's a singular thing that explains something.
Yeah,
it can be multiple things. And this idea of, latching on to one thing, human behavior is extremely complex, and so is human belief formation. It's influenced by many different cognitive biases. It's influenced by social aspects. It's influenced by, your particular morality that you have, and all sorts of different things. It's not singular.
See, but I truly believe that if Ocean was to hang around our peer group for like a year, and every time he brought up Odin, we kind of laugh at him and then move on, like not even take it seriously. Within a year, he would give up his belief in Odin. I could be wrong.
Yeah, you could be wrong about that. I think Odin's pretty deeply dug in with his Odin belief. Yeah.
He doesn't want to give up that chain around his neck.
Well, it's a lovely chain.
Yeah, it is.
By the way, Ocean, I really like the fact that you believe in Odin. I actually think it's quite cool.
Well, and I think that's why he believes in Odin, because it's quite cool.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just as likely to be true as Christianity. I mean, I know Ocean disagrees with that, but that's my opinion. But once again, we're talking about him when he's not on video. That's not fair.
No, he can defend himself in chat. The coolness factor is helpful, but not the reason. Yeah, I can see that. But if you link
can we all agree that Yahweh is a dick?
I agree with you. But if he's real, is that someone you want to get on the wrong side of?
Well, there's the George Carlin quote that comes to mind. Anyway, change the topic. Skeptic77 thinks he's a real dick. I think Odin's cool. I'm sort of warming up to Odin belief.
So you're saying if you hung around Ocean and his friends for a while, you'd become an Odin believer? Because
I might do. Like in kind of like a symbolic like a engaging in the symbology, like in the same way that like um
But you wouldn't be a true Odinite. You would be a poser.
um well, I don't know. I mean, maybe Ocean would think it's sufficient to just engage in the symbology and live out the virtues, in adopt the practice.
No, if I'm going to worship any deity, it has to be a woman. Wouldn't you agree?
By the way, right now this is just a long form troll of Leon. Because I know right now he's probably like screaming in his little woman brain. By the way, that's using Leon's words against him, not what I think. I'm just waiting for his comment now. So if your ideal symbology to engage with would be of a female deity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what attributes would this deity have?
Huge tracts of land.
I thought you were going to say something else there.
Well, that's a SNL reference.
Yeah.
Leon knows what I'm talking about. I figure if you're going to have a personal relationship with a deity, it'd be one that fits your natural proclivities. Oh, Jonathan, are you still in here? Jonathan, are you still in here? Because while you were talking, Jonathan said that, because I first met Jonathan. His name, shouldn't say his real name, but he in Blab was a deist type, and we had some really good conversations. And then tonight he said, and he looks like he's gone already, but he said that because I raised doubt in the Bible in him, he gave up the belief. Oh, he is here. Am I representing you right, Jonathan? Which I think that's the first time I've ever heard that from you, Jonathan. I seem to remember you as just waffling between theism and deism.
Does Jonathan, or did Jonathan go to church actively?
I don't think so, but I think first cause was, if I remember correctly, first cause was really important to him. Something can't come from nothing. So it made sense to him that there was this God out there. But I think when I told Jonathan that an atheist doesn't say that there is no God or there can't be a God, it's basically just saying I don't believe that there's a God and there might be one. I think there was like a light bulb went off in Jonathan that said, "Hey, okay, I understand that," because I'm honestly not prepared to say there can't be a God. Like, I'm not omniscient. I don't know everything. But I'm also not going to believe in something without sufficient reason. And I think that, Jonathan's saying yes. And I think that resonated with Jonathan. It almost, I think, gave him permission to disbelieve without, I think rightly so, making a faith statement judgment that there can't be any gods.
Yeah, this is a pretty common confusion, and I think it's like unfortunate that it's propagated by Christians. Not all Christians, of course, but this idea that atheism is about saying claiming certainty that there are no gods.
Yeah.
I mean, It's okay though, actually, if it did mean that, because we could just have another term that means the thing that we believe in. But at the moment, the common terminology is that atheism is more on the belief axis as opposed to the knowledge axis. It's more about whether or not you have a belief in, as opposed to claim to know.
What do you think of this? I was thinking about this today. You know how it's said that religion is a drug, an opiate?
Who was that by, like Mark Twain or something?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
what if it's not religion that's the opiate, but the need for certainty is? In other words, I'm going a level deeper. And I think it's that desire for certainty is a drug, is an opiate. That people just want to know so desperately that something is true, and that they could never, ever, 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 ever be wrong about it. And it's always, 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 always true. That is like a drug.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was Marx, you commie scum.
I was going to say that too, but I didn't want to disagree with you on camera because I know how
No,
you.
I didn't know. I don't know who. I wasn't making. Yeah,
Because I know once you've been drinking and I disagree with you,
things come out.
I got the bruises to show.
Oh, sorry. Now Doug and I have never met in outside or in real meat space.
MEET.
It's all camera. Yeah, MEAT. No, MEAT. Meat space, like in my meat bag. It's always in the virtual. Like.
But yeah,
what was the thought before then?
The need for certainty is the real drug, not religion.
Yeah, and I think that would. I think that's a good distinction to make, because like it applies to other things as well. Like people seek certainty in other domains of their lives outside of religion too, and I think one of the key features of a better epistemology and an ability to be less wrong is to accept this, the reality that for most claims, certainty is just a pipe dream. Practical certainty is achievable. Absolute certainty is not. And it's I think that's like one of the key steps to a better epistemology.
Yeah, I'm often accused of, oh, Doug, you just think that you can know nothing for sure, and what's postmodernism? I've been called all these things, but it's the difference between philosophical knowing and practical knowing, and I'm all for practical knowing. Like we can get really, really close to say, yes, I know this for sure.
Yeah, like currently my hair is tied up in a ponytail, well, a bun or whatever you want to call it. Whatever it is, it's tied up with a hair tie. Like, and, people can look at it and like, okay, like, now there's a bunch of people who like can, I think, rationally say that they know that that's true. They might not have absolute certainty. Of course, I could be like really, just a special CGI effect, and it's, constantly redrawing my face to make it look like that. And instead I have a big giant purple monster on my head.
Ocean's still talking, but I felt sorry for Ocean the other night, because when I was on with the Flat Earther, Ocean was giving me a hard time, like, Doug, why are you even wasting your time? And then people politely reminded him, you think Doug is crazy for talking, or do you think the Flat Earther is crazy and yet you believe in Odin? It's like,
But I do think that there's like quite a significant difference between Ocean's belief and Ocean. You might not like this characterization, but I think that you have retreated into the unfalsifiable, and you think that you can provisionally hold the belief, because of the personal experience and the unfalsifiability. And I think Ocean's claim would be that the primary difference is that belief in flat Earth is, just absolutely clearly falsifiable and is actually falsified. And, there are very empirical ways we can go about testing that belief, and we find it to be false. So I think he would say that there's like a categorical difference between his belief in Odin and the flat earthers.
I agree with what you're saying, but from the perspective of this flat earther, I'm not so sure about that, because he might say that currently we do not have the technology to falsify whether or not the earth is flat or not, or a sphere or not, because he basically denies all the evidence as actually being evidence. So what you and I would say is clearly falsifiable, he would say, no, it's not clear. And someday it might be falsifiable, just like Ocean says, yeah, maybe someday we could falsify Odin. I don't know how, but currently we can't. Hey, Leon.
Doug, this is God. I've been watching your channel again. Stop blaspheming Odin.
Okay. Which God are you?
Oh, now that I'm on camera, it blows the illusion, Doug. I was playing to the YouTube crowd. Sorry, I was making a coffee and I turned you guys off. And when I turned you back on, the first thing I heard was Cam, and that was just a long form troll of Leon. And I just thought, how perfect that I heard none of it. That I absolutely heard none of it.
Well, you can rewatch it back. It was a subtle troll.
Because Doug knows how much I do that. Doug is forever. My own cousin won't watch my YouTube channel. That's right, Doug. But if you were better, I would watch.
Hey.
Oh.
Maybe you could earn some love. Maybe you could just earn it, Doug. There might even be a hug in it if you were good enough.
Now that's projection right there, folks.
Why won't my father hug me? Why aren't I huggable?
But for the record, I don't think I've ever asked you to watch my YouTube videos, have I? Maybe once. I don't know.
That might be an accurate statement. No. To be accurate, you are bugging me for not watching them versus asking me to watch them.
Yeah, that's how I roll.
No, I think Cam does not understand the feature bug discussion. I do think the crazier the belief, there is something to belonging. If there's got to be some crazy in the belief, because if there isn't crazy in the belief, you're not a religion anymore. You're just a normal guy or girl.
Yeah. So I didn't. Well, I'm not trying to disagree with that part. It's more that I don't think that that's the cause of the origin of the belief. I think that might be why, communities might form around it, or at least might be part of the explanation why. I mean, I would argue that if everybody had a rational epistemology and we had better cognitive faculties, even if it were the case that this other part was involved, you still, you wouldn't actually see it happen. So, like, it's only got to be part of the explanation, and that's my point.
Well, certainly. Oh, nice. I've got Newcastle Brown Ale in the fridge, but I'm not drinking these days. Does this look like a body that drinks, Doug?
I think you might miss that.
I said you look too finely tuned to drink, Leon.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, by the way, for the people watching, us three have an ab competition. May 1st, we're going to show off our abs, and whoever has the best defined.
Best as defined by Reed. This is a reality TV show.
No. Reed and Jess both.
Oh, you've changed the bet, Doug. This is the first I'm hearing about Jess.
Jess was the first one. Reed was the second. So,
that's right. Sorry, it was the autistic crowd. That's right.
Yeah, Reed is autistic and Jess is very autistic.
Allegedly.
And so we'll have a fair judgment. And what do we win? Whoever wins the most defined
make up
abs.
T-shirts.
Yeah.
I think, to be fair, the T-shirt has to read first, second, and third. It's the same T-shirt, so everybody wears it. So, if you won, your name is first, but it's the same order for every T-shirt, so everybody knows where you fit.
So I think I'm going to start training for the competition starting tomorrow. After I drink this tonight,
I'm just gonna use chemistry. I'm gonna potassium load the shit out of it, and then you sodium load and then you potassium load. How do the bodybuilders do it?
Steroids.
I'll look it up.
Steroids, yeah. Hard work and steroids.
I should have given odds or some type of handicap on myself because it's not fair that I have such a high T count and you guys don't.
You don't know that we don't have a high T count, Doug.
No, but it's actually funny because Doug thinks that he knows that he has a high T count. I've already offered an alternate explanation, but he still hasn't submitted himself to another test. What does that tell you, Leon?
It's Bayesian logic. If you are tested positive for a very rare disease, chances are the test is wrong. And he tested positive for a very rare amount of T count. So Occam's broom.
Tony, okay, to be fair, Tony, this hasn't come up in like a couple of months. So is this a new test, Doug, or are we seeing much of the same evidence?
Because
it's under a year old.
Photoshop and a laser printer could never have produced that piece of paper.
Okay, guys. My testosterone count, 989.1 nanograms per deciliter. Can you see that?
What's the date, Doug?
The date is... Yeah, I knew I took it last summer, so it's less than a year. This is the middle page. So I don't know.
There must not be a strong correlation between T count and motility of your sperm.
No, I have low sperm count. That's been documented as well. I won't bring that paperwork out though. But let me show you something here. So Cam, I don't know why you think that this is bogus.
No, I don't think it is. I just think that like a additional test would is in order. How old are you? Personal question.
I just
46.
I just turned 46.
When was your birthday? Because I don't think I said happy birthday, and I apologize for that.
I'll tell you off stream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Doug, sorry, Doug, I got a couple questions for you. Your mother's maiden name, the name of your first pet, the best man and best...
Or the last 4 digits of your social security.
Yeah, I just need the last 4 digits. That's it.
Okay, let me... what? How come is this not working?
Okay, while you guys are on the topic of conspiracy theories, you need to, without Googling it, without looking it, going with absolute ignorance, you need to watch the movie The Avalanche Project. This is a Penn Jillette recommendation. Oh.
You're fine. It was me.
Oh, okay.
See, like, this is what I'm saying, Doug. Like, on background evidence, like on prior probability, right, your T count shouldn't be that high. So, like, you know, like...
Well, hang on. Let me...
No, hold on. What's the sensitivity and specificity of the T count test? Have you found that out?
Yeah, I could actually be 20% higher than it is.
You could also be 20% lower, and that would be more likely, right?
Okay, for the people that...
Did you ever get told the sensitivity and the specificity?
No.
Even the doctors don't understand those words, Cam.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know the doctors are particularly bad at Bayesian logic, right? Like
Okay.
of a
I
subgroup.
do.
Hang on.
They're
hang on.
very bad at understanding test results.
This is in the same units as my test result, nanograms per deciliter. I was at 989, which is up here. I have a higher T count than 20-year-olds. Actually, probably 18-year-olds. Yeah, some, yeah. And my T count should be around 450, 500. So I am double the man you guys are.
Allegedly. I love how this is the measurement. Like talk about confirmation bias and talk about cognitive biases. Doug has hung so much on this one number.
Now, what do you call that? A selection bias, right?
This is my belief. This is my deeply held belief, and I'm not moving an inch.
But you will submit it to falsification at some stage, though, right?
Well, if I take the test again this summer and it comes out much lower, then I will keep taking the test until I get the result I want.
No, but seriously though, do you know what the sensitivity and specificity of a T count test is? Is it like, like 100, or?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
But my guess is it can't be if they're doing nanograms per deciliter to the first decimal digit. You know how precise that is? Like if the error bars are anything anything proportional to the units used, I can't see it being more than 20% off in either direction.
It might just be somebody who never found out what significant figures were in high school.
This was done by a reputable laboratory in Chihuahua, Mexico.
But see, that's the thing, Doug. Is that like
been to Chihuahua?
Yeah.
Do you know this, Doug?
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah. We have Leon and I have relatives in Chihuahua, Mexico.
What's it like?
Blonde-haired, blue-eyed, like third, fourth generation Mexican Mennonites.
Mm.
So it's really
Aren't
funny.
there some Mormons down there too?
Some what?
Mormons?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe.
Yeah.
The Mennonites emigrated from Canada and the U.S. when they could no longer, not really homeschool. Like there were Mennonite schools that the government gave a 50-year contract to that they could just educate their kids any way they wanted to. They didn't, they weren't in the same rules of having to go to public education. And when that expired, a significant number of Mennonites then moved to Mexico so that they could keep educating or propagandizing their children.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to meet someone with blonde hair, blue eyes, third generation Mexican, who can speak both German and Spanish. But yet there's
very fluently.
Yeah, but there's many villages in Chihuahua, Mexico that those people can do that.
Do either of you speak German, Leon or Doug?
I can understand way more than Leon. Leon can probably understand.
I've got zero.
No, you got like got 1%. You can understand, but I could probably understand.
A little, yeah.
I could probably understand 40%. But it's
that's impressive.
It's a dialect of German, it's not German. It's called Plotdeutsch.
It's closer to Dutch.
Yeah, it's closer
to Dutch. But my dad was a translator for some research studies in Mexico because he could speak the dialect and speak English. And the people couldn't speak English. They could only speak this form of Low German. So my dad actually worked, because he was at the university in Tucson doing a sabbatical. And one of the sociologists there said, "Hey, come with me to Mexico. I need a translator."
Have you seen any monkeys today, Leon?
At the moment,
lots of monkeys. There's one monkey, somebody had like thrown a T-shirt up in the trees. So this little monkey was like playing and swinging from the T-shirt that was attached to a branch. It was pretty cute. But I figured out why there's so many monkeys here today. I saw a military guy with a wheelbarrow full of monkey food feeding the monkeys right near like a machine gun nest. And so I'm thinking, okay, they know something. They're using monkeys as an early detection. They want the monkeys around them because I think, at night or whatever, if somebody comes, the monkeys are going to start hooting. So they're actually using these monkeys in a military capacity.
Smart.
These slave monkeys. Yeah, very smart.
It's brilliant, actually. What were you going to ask, Cam?
Do you think that we're living in a simulation?
No. But that's unfalsifiable almost by definition.
And that's the thing. Is there any reason to believe in an unfalsifiable belief? Like,
I don't know.
isn't
Ocean,
it just
is there?
a wash?
Ocean would say yes.
I would say yes.
Oh, Cam.
Yeah, I think that there are really compelling reasons to believe in some beliefs that are unfalsifiable.
Oh, you mean like
How can there be compelling reasons if the belief itself is unfalsifiable? There's some kind of oxymoron going on there.
You would think so, but that's just your naive philosophical position.
For the listeners, the two listeners that watch Doug's channel, Cam's always wrong, and he's an ignorant slut.
There's 24 highly intelligent people watching this right now, Leon. Maybe 23 if you count me.
I think Doug has a server. Yeah, Doug has a server farm of YouTube computers, and he turns them on when he goes online.
So here, I'll give an example. Like, there's a spacecraft, and it's about to fly over the cosmological horizon such that no information from it, once it passes it, will ever physically be possible to reach us. Now, general relativity...
Have we sent the spaceship?
Well, I mean, that doesn't really matter. It's a hypothetical.
Sorry, I can't deal with those. Can you make it real for me? Which spaceship are you talking about? Is this the Voyager? Are you talking about Voyager?
So, I mean, you can see where this is going. Like, it's unfalsifiable whether or not the spacecraft exists after it crosses the cosmological horizon. But yet, on the basis of our best predictive models, we think that it will still exist, despite the fact that it's unfalsifiable.
But the metaphor breaks down.
It's not just, and it's not just unfalsifiable in practice. It's unfalsifiable in theory. Like, our best model of the universe tells us that it's impossible for us to get information from that spacecraft after it crosses the cosmological horizon.
But we had information before it crosses. That's the metaphor breaks down a tiny bit.
Well, you asked me whether or not I thought that there was ever a good reason to believe in things that were unfalsifiable. I'm just being that if I had something in mind you didn't predict, that's not my fault. It's yours.
But I said, to defend myself, I said if there weren't good reasons, yeah, there are good reasons in that example. You came up with a good counter example, but like right now to create a belief kind of out of thin air where there's no reason, like in that example there's a past. That spaceship has a past that we know about, so we're just extrapolating that it exists. And like you say, there's no way to confirm nor deny whether it exists, but we did know at some time it exists. Whereas these belief systems that I think we're probably talking about that are unfalsifiable, what's the genesis of it? There was never really ever a good reason to believe in them.
Yeah, and I mean, I would.
Or there was never an empirical reason to believe in them. There probably wasn't a burning bush. Somebody just wrote down that there was a burning bush.
So I would characterize it differently. I mean, I would talk about it in the sense of whether or not it's something predicted by a theory that we have high confidence in. I think it's less about whether or not we have, specific evidence of the spacecraft existing before it crosses the cosmological horizon. I think it's more to do with whether or not we have background evidence that supports the theory that predicts it. And so, like, you could make a claim that, for some of these religions or whatever it is that we're talking about that's unfalsifiable, that there are, like, grounds to believe in the model that makes the prediction independent of whether or not we can falsify the actual prediction.
So can we apply this to flat earthers? Is there good reasons to believe the earth is flat? Because there's a lot of falsifiable evidence that the earth is not flat, and yet they can cling to an epistemology, or at least they can cling to a belief that the earth is flat in the face of piles of evidence.
Yeah. So for them, I mean, the way their particular case hashes out, I think there's not, like, good reason to believe, the background model that predicts the flat Earth, like, independent reason. Like, if for example, we were epistemically justified in believing that Genesis and the Book of Psalms were inerrant, then, maybe it would be a different story.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that I think the flat Earth is actually in the category of falsifiable beliefs. I think it's more just their making up of excuses that makes it less, their willingness to just say, oh, well, everybody is lying. It's still falsifiable when it is falsified. They just make lots of excuses.
See, I think he, Matt was his name. He has not tweeted me directly, except to say thank you or something once after we talked. But he tweeted like multiple times with other people about flat Earth. And I think he is hesitant to debate me on this now not because he thinks that I can beat him, but I think he just finds me too likable. Because I admitted to him that, if your model is true, I think I'd have to become a theist. And I said that on purpose with him because I want him to know that there's a lot at stake with this theory of his. And I want him to know that I'm at least a little bit open to, it's like 0.1% chance, but open to his idea, and that I understand the impact of his belief. And I think he respected that about me. Mm-hmm. But then the question is, what is the best way to convince a flat earther that the earth is spherical? And I honestly don't think it's through evidence. Because that's not why they believe. Mm-hmm. It's through community or the religious text. So I have to raise doubt in his belief in the Book of Enoch, and I have to be a friend, or someone who is a ball earther has to be a friend to him, and not just dismiss him.
I'll just stop you there, Doug. I'm not sure that you have to do anything.
No.
I'm not sure whether or not you should do anything.
So I'm not saying it has to be me.
I know. I'm just teasing.
But I think this also applies to believers in Jesus, believers in Yahweh, believers in Odin.
You mean believers in Jesus Christ?
Yes. That it's what changes people's minds, or at least makes them more open to being wrong, and I'm including myself, that it's this sense of doubt and community. having a community that disagrees with you and having doubt that, or being open to the idea that you could be wrong. Those two things. Once you're open to the idea that you could be wrong about a deeply held belief and you're in a community that disagrees with you, that is a prime environment for belief revision.
Well, and I guess this is even, Cam might know the scientist, people conform those experiments to establish how strongly humans conform. Even when they know that it's wrong, they're going to say the line is, longer or shorter. There's a very famous set of experiments. Like, we do conform to our peer group. We conform to the beliefs of our peer group. It's a powerful force. And so, yeah.
I think that those experiments are relevant. I think group conformity does exist. I consider using that as a mechanism to be part of the dark arts. Like, I think it's the dark arts of belief change or dark arts of belief manipulation. And I'm not quite sure yet whether I'm comfortable abusing these things that we find out about human psychology to make people change for reasons that actually are poor on epistemic grounds.
Right.
It might be true that your belief that Yahweh doesn't exist, or your belief that like the earth is a sphere, is right. But getting somebody else to change their mind to conform with yours via means that are not rational, I'm not sure whether or not that's moral.
He's talking about you right now, Doug.
But I still don't know. I'm not claiming a strong claim.
Wait a minute.
It's a possible opinion.
I was talking to people in chat. Are you saying I'm doing something immoral?
Well, if it were immoral, then I think that it would be only slightly such. But like, you could create what would you say?
Who was talking about Cam being the most polite person when he comes to "you're full of shit, Doug"? Like, so I'm going to translate what Cam just said in a very nice New Zealand accent. But it's like, "You're full of shit, Doug."
I still don't. Are you saying that by me raising doubt in people, I'm doing something immoral?
So it's more that I question. Okay, so like, let's say, right, that you just learned some new knowledge, like you just learned something new that allowed you to manipulate people's belief using a mechanism that wasn't related to rationality. Like, it wasn't related to like a fair and honest epistemological process. Like, the process that you went to change the person's mind was related to something other than like a good belief forming process. What I'm saying is whether or not that's moral.
Well, I'm going to stop.
It's not changing people's mind. It's about using cognitive tricks in order to do so. Like,
you think I'm using tricks?
Well, Doug, hold your response for a second. Cam?
Yeah.
So are you familiar with the works? This Sarah Wacky, there's many, like the book would be called Nudge or Influence. Like, there are people who have written down the books that sort of bring together all the research on how to change people's minds. The most famous being Influence and Nudge, one of which I'm sure you've read, if not both. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about right now?
Doug doesn't read books.
No, I'm talking to you, Cam.
Yeah, I've heard of Influence and Nudge, but I think I've actually read some of Nudge. I don't think I got through it all.
I'm a nudger, Cam.
For those listening, Nudge is a book that sort of summarizes the research Cam's talking about, that we now know a lot about human psychology, and we know how to manipulate human psychology. So the book of Nudge is saying, what policies could government implement to nudge people knowing what we know about people? For example, in certain European states, on your driver's license, the default is you are an organ donor. But you can check a box saying, I don't want to be an organ donor. In the States, the default is you are not an organ donor, but you can check a box to say you are an organ donor. So, of course, in reality, 90% of people in the Netherlands are organ donators, but only 10% of people in the States are organ donators, when on the surface, it's the same choice. But what we know about people is they're lazy and they're going to take the default. So there's an example, I think, an interesting example of, is it okay, knowing that, is it okay for governments to set the defaults for people knowing the outcome? So, and the other one is the 401k program. Like when they do the research, if the default is just to buy the S&P 500, but you could also, if you want to, make your own choices. And of course, people who are left to their own choices tend to get overwhelmed by the choice and do nothing. So I think it's an interesting example of government, not even governments, but even companies and corporations using the concept of nudge in a benevolent way to affect outcomes. Is that moral, Cam?
Yeah, I think that in those ones, it probably is, yeah. I mean, maybe it wouldn't be if they were using it to some more nefarious purpose. I mean, but in the case of organ donation, I think that most people's objection to it is based on pretty irrational grounds. And organ
And to be
donation,
fair, they don't
on a
have to
whole.
donate their organs. There is a mechanism for, like, we're not taking away people's choices. We're just making the default choice what we decide it to be, knowing most people aren't going to spend the energy to tick a box.
Yeah, and so I think that that's a good example of, you know, changing behavior. I'm not quite sure it's a good example of a nudging method or a mechanism to change belief. What I'm more focusing on, I mean, you could say that their beliefs are like that they end up believing, oh, well, I'm an organ donor. You know, so it changes it in that part, but I'm more meaning a dark art, which is what I like to call them, or like
I want to be like Ocean.
a means by which we change.
You need to have a
people's
fancy
mind.
thing.
Yeah,
Well,
you
I have a
guys
You
fancy
have a fancy
thing.
shock mount. If you don't have a fancy shock mount, you can't have.
I have a fancy cord. That's all that's going on for me. But yeah, like if you use them, like, so say if we found out that like I could change your mind, Leon, simply by like whistling a tune that you found really appealing, and then telling you a belief. Like, you know, like I whistled a tune and then I say, oh, you're gay. Or I whistle a tune and I say, you know,
You don't need to whistle a tune to tell me I'm gay. But
I whistle a tune and then say you don't need glasses or something like that. The question I'm more asking is whether or not that would be okay for me to change your beliefs like that by a non-rational means.
right. Yeah, I don't think anybody's pushing back on the concept of we shouldn't manipulate people without giving them, you know, like any informed decision is a decision. They need to be informed about it and not manipulated by it.
Well, I don't know if we are in agreement with that, because Doug,
You guys are being rude.
Hi, Ocean. How you doing?
What's up?
Welcome. Ocean's very polite. He's been sitting there very politely and not interrupting.
Yeah, I guess.
You have a beautiful setup going on there.
Thank you.
Even the fact that the background is less in focus than the foreground. How do you do that?
I have a 28mm lens on my webcam. I have converted a DSLR into a webcam.
Okay.
Nice.
So
Nice.
Cam and Ocean, can you guys both show us the back of your head?
Oh yeah, we both have ponytail things.
Leon,
That's the
you
that's
and
the
I
reason
are,
my cam is warming up to the Odin.
And we have.
Okay, I
and we
judge
have
the
beards
hell out of
too.
sensitive ponytail guys. Just full disclosure.
I'm not very sensitive.
Yeah, neither am I, so you're okay.
so Ocean, do you think Cam thinks I'm dabbling with immorality?
I'm unsure.
I heard his justification. I think it's interesting. You're just trying to convince people by being friendly with them, basically, or showing them I don't know if I'd call it an underhanded tactic unless you were trying to say, well, I guess you are trying to say this is how I'm going to do it, rather than with the rational method.
See, compared to the other SE people, I think I'm the most. I'm going to get in trouble here, but I think
SE.
Street epistemology.
Street epistemology.
Oh yeah.
I put my cards on the table. I use words like I proselytize doubt. I think doubt is a virtue. It's my gospel of doubt. It's on my Twitter page. It's on my YouTube channel. It's like, Cam, my cards are on the table. I'm not hiding the fact that I want people to doubt, to think critically about their beliefs.
Sorry,
So
Doug.
I
I need
was-
that cigarette.
You're
I need
so
Martin
friendly in a way
cigarette.
that's sniveling.
Doug, you seem awfully defensive. How come you think I'm the one being defensive? It's you that's being defensive. You're the defensive one.
But I do admit that I use things like emotion, because I believe that 85% of people are more emotional than rational. And so many times I
would agree with that.
I get complaints from atheists that I don't delve into the facts enough. The facts of how crazy Christianity is, or the facts of like this flat earther I had on the other day. But I truly think that when you start delving into the facts and the arguments, it becomes a shit show, and it's mired in muck, and it goes nowhere.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know, with your conversation with the flat earther, I don't have a problem with your approach so much. I did take issue when he was talking about like the facts of the Book of Enoch and then the facts of the Book of Genesis, and he was trying to say that they were related. I wanted more calling out on stuff like that, and I was trying to post stuff in the live chat that was being stupid. But I think that if you did dive into the facts maybe a little bit more than you do.
But what do you expect would have happened if I would have called them out on that?
He would have to address the problem.
But then we would have talked for 30 minutes about the Book of Enoch, which nobody wants to listen to.
I wanted to listen to it. Are you kidding me?
Doug's all about the ratings, Ocean. He's all about the ratings.
I love listening to people talk about the Book of Enoch. I think it's amazing. It's such a fun little book.
The Book of Enoch's actually quoted from within the New Testament in the book.
I
Jude,
went out and got
right?
my copy of the Book of Enoch while that interview was going on.
What is
because
the historicity of the Book of Enoch? Where does it come from?
Probably nil.
No, but was it written was it a found manuscript? Like, what's its
I
history?
think it was written in the intertestamental period, right?
I don't exactly know when it was written. I know it's prior to 1 AD.
Okay, not 1800s or 1700s. Like, it's not just somebody.
No.
It's definitely a very old text. It just wasn't accepted into the Jewish canon.
Yeah, well, and like I said, I'm pretty sure that it actually gets referenced from within Jude, which is in the New Testament.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Like,
written
yeah, it
between
does-
100
it
and
is
300
referenced.
BC. Yeah, I think it would be akin to any other apocryphal book.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cam, can you explain to me? We refer to these books that didn't make it into the Bible as the Apocrypha. But if somebody says, I don't know if this story about Larry King is apocryphal or not. Like, if I talk about, or here's an apocryphal quote
Whether or
from
not it's
church.
accepted in canon.
Yeah, but we almost use the word apocryphal as not factual. Like in common modern language, if I say, this story is apocryphal, I'm almost admitting it's not true. Yet that's not quite how we refer to the Apocrypha. We're not saying these books aren't true. We're just saying they were not
That's what
put
the
into
Catholics are saying when
Yeah,
apocryphal.
so that's a
Oh.
great point. So some Christians, or actually,
So
in fact,
Catholics are saying the Apocrypha is bullshit.
well, no, actually, the Catholics include in their Bible a number.
Actually,
of
you're right. I'm talking
that
about
the
Protestants. You're right.
Yeah, the Protestants, like, they don't at
Protestants
all
use apocrypha.
consider like scriptural, like, so and even like which is kind of relevant to Nothing Serious, the guy Matt that Doug talked to, he he subscribes more to the Ethiopian lineage of churches, which have actually a much more expanded canon than what Protestants and Catholics do, and even the Eastern Orthodox have a smaller canon. But yeah, apocryphal, like among many Christians, means like false, and that's where I think
It's been co-opted into modern
common
language.
parlance comes from. Yeah.
English, the language, has a Protestant connection. There's a lot of Protestants that use English.
So yeah, Chet thinks, Ocean, that you're just a believer in Odin because of that chain you're wearing right now around your neck. That if you
It's not
stop,
a chain. That's what I was saying. It's a piece of leather.
yeah, and if you,
I think it might have been a chain in the other video. I actually switched necklaces a little while ago. It's still
Is
the hammer
Odin
of Thor.
the one with the who's Odin? Is he the one with the hammer?
The hammer is Thor.
Oh.
no, he's
That's what I'm wearing right now. Is the Mjolnir.
Thor's dad is Odin.
Yeah.
Who's so in the Hindu pantheon? It all kind of goes up. Is it Brahma? Like there's one at the top. Who's at the top of the Greek?
In Hinduism, there's one at the top that is all the others. Like the others are avatars of
Okay,
Brahman.
right? Brahman. Okay.
And
Who would be the first god of? Like if Odin has a father, does that father have a father?
There
Like,
isn't
where
really a
does that-
first god. The early creation myths involve like a world that's already there. Like Ymir exists already, and then, so it's like the creation myth in Norse mythology is like we also don't have access to all the stories. So there might be a creation myth that's older than the creation myth we have access to with the Norse. But it's when it deals with Odin killing Ymir and then carving the earth out of the skull of Ymir, then there's already at that point there's already like a bunch of things around.
Okay, so we're in Norse mythology, not Greek mythology.
Right. Greek mythology has much
Norse
more
means-
meat to it, if that makes sense. Like there's more.
But,
There's more written.
but Norse is Viking, correct?
Yeah, as a simpler term. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, that's Vikings are a subset of that culture.
Oh, they're what the English called them, because they would.
What would the Vikings
Viking
call
was
themselves?
a profession. It was something they did.
Yeah, the pirates.
Yeah.
Um,
But there were several Norse tribes, some of which were counted as Vikings. Some of them are not.
and geographically, they originated where?
Denmark, Sweden,
Yeah, that's
Norway, and a little bit of Finland,
So out of
And they just-
and Iceland. Obviously, there's Iceland and Greenland would be. They had colonies there.
so out of 100 of your peers or people you know, what percentage of them share your belief in Odin and other gods?
Maybe 2 or 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you're lonely.
More or less. I was the only one for a long time. I came to this very independently. I wound up finding others later that had like a similar path. So
do you ever feel?
and came to the beliefs in a similar situation, so to speak.
Do you ever feel
and is this
persecuted?
belief
When I was living in North Georgia,
Uh,
and there was a lot more Christians up there, and they can be a little aggressive at times. At times, I felt persecuted. Yeah, but I never really complained about it.
would there be a contradiction in believing that Jesus existed and the Norse mythology? Like, could all the North
Jesus existing? No.
meaning if Norse mythology is true, Jesus was not divine.
He could be divine. He just wouldn't be
That's
the
what-
only God.
That's what I mean. Like I'm thinking is like even within Hinduism, Hindus can still accept Christians because of course they are pantheistic.
You can
and so
be a
Jesus-
Hindu that recognizes Christianity. It's hard to be a Christian that recognizes Hinduism. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's the
It's not
same goes with the Norse.
okay.
You could be a Norse polytheist that recognizes the divinity in Christ. I'm not, but you can be. There are people that do. But the issue would come into saying when Christ says is the only one. or that he's the way, the truth, and the light, and this stuff. So one of the reasons why I don't hold him to be divine is because he says things that are just completely contradictory to the idea of polytheism.
And my brain's not remembering who wrote the Discworld series. Cam, you'll know this.
God damn it!
Oh,
You know what I mean? You know what I
yeah, I do. I should know that.
I've read or listened to all the books, but because doesn't he adopt a very inclusive view of? Yeah, the Pratchett books, because he looks at it's almost
Is he
as
Baha'i or something, or like what do you?
I think he is Baha'i. I think
Yeah, that could make sense.
The mythology or whatever, the world that he creates has gods and mortals, and it almost like, what would this world look like if his world was true? And it is exactly the same. Like, his conceit is, yeah, there's gods, but they're just fucking with us. And so the world would look exactly the way it looks, even if these gods existed, because these gods are just playing chess with the mortals.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't read the Discworld series, so
They're very funny.
Tony, Ocean Tony wants to know what your belief looks like in practice. So give her a 60-second practical.
I don't know what that means.
Like remember we were talking about prayer and any rituals and any inspirations, that sort of thing.
I mean, I have an altar, for example.
Is it in the room you're in right now?
Yeah. It's way back there, but
can you point the camera that direction, or is that too much work?
That would not work. I have a picture of it. Hold on, let me pull it up. I can just switch my webcam to that picture because I'm awesome. Hold on a minute.
Doug can do that too, which means he's awesome. And Leon and I,
he may be able to do that too, but it might not be because he's awesome.
It's because of my high T count.
I think we all screen share just through the platform of Appear. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, there's a cross on there too that freaks the Christians out.
I have to say that's pretty cool. And by altar, does that mean that there's an active element of
it's a worship
devotion?
Yeah, it's a prayer space, so to speak. And then below it, there's a lot of books that are on different subjects of paganism. So and then I've got several other shelves where there's even more books about this stuff. So
I've got a few Indian friends, or have made a few Indian friends over the years, and I've seen quite a few of their altars, and there's similarity there, and I accept them. I think people I don't know why it is that they think belief in Norse gods is any more ridiculous than, say, Hinduism.
I put Hinduism on a similar level. It's actually my brother married a Hindu, and there's a lot of people in her family I get along with really well, because it's even on that spiritual level, because we can acknowledge one another's beliefs and not get into any issue about it.
Mm. Just a quick question. I might have asked you this, but are the gods you believe in embodied?
I don't know. I've been asked that a couple of times. I've had the conversation about them as disembodied, and I've had the conversation about them as embodied, and I don't think there's any way to verify it, so I just go with an I don't know for that.
Yeah, so kind of like a 50-50.
Yeah, it could be either way. I could see you coming up with a construct with one way or the other.
Not all probabilities are 50-50, Cam.
I mean, maybe it's not 50-50. I don't know. I don't know how you would quantify it.
Doug was talking to some guy, and he had some religious experience where he was almost basically in a haunted house and saw Jesus. And so either it happened or it didn't happen. And in his mind, the probability, for anything that could have happened or didn't happen, it's 50-50. And the rest of us are well, no, the chance of you getting struck by lightning, it could happen or it could not happen. It's not 50-50. But in this guy's world, every event that was clearly
remember
possible or impossible was 50-50.
Doug, I'm
This
gonna
is
be
the
a
guy,
dick to
Doug,
you
that
real
was
quick.
impressed by the fact that you were a CFA.
Oh, yeah, I remember that guy.
Doug said that I pray to an altar. I don't pray to an altar. I pray at an altar. Is a
Yeah,
distinction.
come on, Doug. Get the.
Well, no,
distinction.
in my belief
together.
system, you pray to an altar. In your belief system, you pray at an
No,
altar.
but it matters what's in his
I don't
head
know.
conceptually at the time, right?
Sorry, Doug, did you pray to a pew in church? Were you praying
this-
to a pew in church?
Yeah, this is the same thing that pisses me off when like Christians talk about like idol worship, like, and they talk about like, anyway.
You're breaking up, Cam.
Are you talking about me, Cam, or are you talking about Doug?
No, I'm talking about Doug.
No.
I'm on your side, Ocean.
People with ponytails have to stick together.
I know, right? We got beards too.
I hope at the heart of
So-
Cam's argument here is all religions are equally ridiculous. I will not use the word
I don't think
retarded
so.
because that's offensive.
I think that Christianity is infinitely more ridiculous than Hinduism or Odinism.
So what
Is
would
that-
make, like, again, in
is
terms of
logical
epistemology, if we're going to talk rational, what
No,
makes
if you want to
one
talk about
religion-
epistemology, that's not where the breakdown is. The breakdown is in examining the beliefs from an internal critique.
So when you said infinitely, do you justify the infinite part because of like logical contradiction?
I think that Christianity is absurd, and the absurdity are in the claims that it makes, like the philosophical contradictions. Not necessarily contradictions in the Bible, but stuff like the Euthyphro, problem of evil, problem of omniscience, or omnipotence, rather. I don't think that those. I think that those things make Christianity absurd.
See, I'm on your side, Ocean, and the reason why is because I've been trying to tell Christians that belief in more than one God is actually a better explanation of the world. I mean, I
Doug
don't
is
think-
like pulling out the fucking Mask of Odin and shit. What the fuck?
See, I don't
Right.
think that belief in multiple gods is a good explanation, but
I think it's better.
I think it's a better explanation.
Yeah.
So
would
you
agree
guys
with
are dancing around internal consistency. Is your belief system consistent?
Right. Coherent
can
is
what-
what I'm looking for.
Yeah, coherent. Better word. So
Yeah,
we
and-
live in this world. If we look out to the world and if we admit to the reality that we actually live in, Christians seem to have to deny some of that reality. Like they
Right.
almost cannot admit to the way the world really is.
Or they
because
have to
they're-
do something that has conflicting ideas. Like if you have a
Yeah,
creationist, yeah, true. Holy shit. All right. If if you have a creationist, yeah, they have to deny certain things. But if you have somebody who's like, say, more of a liberal Christian, kind of like Jim Wallace or something like that, they're more into accepting reality or accepting science, but they still have these other issues, like Euthyphro, problem of evil, or problem of omnipotence. Like those are the three big ones that I'll harp on.
And it's interesting because they are big problems. They're not easily apologized for.
Right.
Because
There's also there's an argument of from interpretation. There's divine hiddenness. There's a ton of issues with having an all-powerful moral God that kills people. It just there's a lot of problems with that.
Oh, that's a category error, I'm sure. That's all you're making there.
Of course it is. I've been accused of that.
Well, no, I'm poking fun at a guy that we've talked to back in the
No,
Blab days.
I've heard that. Like,
Yeah.
the person you're making fun of is not the only Christian that's done that shit.
Ocean, can you summarize for me what my biggest problem with your belief is? Remember from our last conversation?
Yeah, you were talking about retreating to unfalsifiability, and that it's that my saying that it's a provisional belief, and then the retreat to unfalsifiability from your perspective is where the problem is.
But why do I think it's a problem?
There's no way to verify it. You can't. There's what is it? I've been using the word today, even in the side chat.
What? Why do you think
Empirically.
Why do you think I believe it's a problem to believe things that are unfalsifiable?
You were coming up with like several other scenarios that would be philosophically consistent that were just strange. I guess I'll qualify a little bit that one of my other things that I look for is a historical rooting somewhere. That this is older than me and goes back to like say before writing.
Okay,
That's something. It doesn't necessarily completely legitimize it, but it's something that helps, I think.
I want to ask Ocean a question, please, Doug.
You have the floor.
What's your name? I'm sorry.
Leon. Oh, I'm
Leon.
sorry.
I'm Leon.
Leon. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Leon's my cousin.
Doug's cousin. Doug's favorite.
Leon's like, I've got a
Doug's
new
favorite.
toy.
He's like, what? Sorry.
He's like, I've got a new toy.
Exactly. But do you think the Norse gods revealed themselves, and that's where the original writings came from?
Possibly.
Okay.
I wouldn't. The writings that we have, a lot of them are Christian, so I wouldn't.
There's a problem right there.
Right.
Yeah. Because my biggest thing is I've yet to find any writings, any scripture.
Mhm.
Like it's really hard to attack beliefs, but I think one thing you can absolutely talk about in a concrete world, if we all agree we're going to use our brains, we're not going to deny the reality that we live in, we can talk about the writings and when they were written and who wrote them. Like these are things we can talk about, and I've yet to come across any scripture or writing or anything that has any inkling of the divine, in the sense that, you know, like the Christian text could have said, by the way, it's a globe. You know what I mean? Like there if it was really truly divinely written, there could be something in that text that was actually revealing a truth that the people at the time did not know. Yet it seems all the writings simply were written by people at the time with the knowledge that they had at the time.
I think that if the best case for that, for something like that, would be the Bhagavad Gita, but it's the point of those kind of texts aren't to reveal like scientific knowledge. They're more about how to reveal. They're more about revealing, say, personal knowledge, and you know, your relationship with yourself or your relationship with the gods, and that's what a lot of the Bhagavad Gita has. That a lot of the Norse sagas deal with that as well. They're more about providing examples for right action or for, you know, just good examples of who you should be. Providing an ought, rather than no ought, because that's one of another.
There's an ought something problem in philosophy.
Is ought, yes. You can't get an ought from an is. So the objective of a lot of religious texts is to provide an ought in some way, and Christians will, you know, they live in this subject. It's kind of a side thing for the Norse, where it's because there's so many different examples that the ought is malleable to the individual and who they decide to follow as an example. But with Christians, there's one ought, there's one example, so there's an objective ought somewhere.
Ocean, I want to be tremendously honest with you. Do you understand why, when it comes to this topic, I have very little desire to talk to you?
What's the right answer, Doug? Just tell him the answer. We're going to be here forever.
I don't even
Ocean,
know.
tell him what he wants to hear.
I'm going to get it wrong. He's giving me a pop quiz, and I don't know what he's talking about.
No.
Help me.
Because as soon as someone tells me that you believe something because of your experience and you hold it provisionally, but you're still going to believe it until it can be proved either logically inconsistent or falsifiable, whatever. Right. I'm done at that point. Like I basically,
I can see how you could be done at that point.
Yeah. So,
I'm not done at that point because I see utility in the belief.
Yeah, and I understand that.
Yeah, it's from that point. I think that after that, that's where the interesting conversation is. Holy.
Whoa! Yeah, I saw
see
that. Yeah, that was Thor.
Don't piss off.
I was going to say it, but I figured that you would say it first.
Don't piss off Odin.
That was Zeus.
Anywho,
because but the utility point, I hear what you're saying with that, but there's so many. Whatever you get from your belief can be gotten in another belief or a no belief, and so
you could even get the same stuff from the same books and not have the belief. That's what a lot of
Ocean,
heathens do.
have you raped and murdered exactly the number of people you want to rape and murder?
Yes.
This is Penn Gillette's question. Because I've raped and murdered exactly the number of people that I desire to rape
Happens
and
to be
murder.
0.
Yeah.
I think some Christians can't answer that one.
No,
It's
sorry.
weird when they say like, "Oh, if I wasn't a believer, I'd be out there
But
raping
you
and
hear
pillaging."
that all
Yeah, I know,
the
that's so-
time. You hear Christians say the reason I'm a good husband, the reason I'm a good father, blah 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 blah, is God, and without it, I'd be. I'm thinking, you're just a horrible person. Like, thank God
But
you're
I
a
don't
Christian.
actually believe them, though. That's
I
the
know
thing.
exactly. They don't. They're not. Yeah, they're not. They're not understanding human primate intuitions. We have a sense of getting along with each other just so we can get along with each other.
Let me ask you this, Ocean. Do you think that a belief that you have no desire to proselytize is a belief worth holding?
I don't really have much desire to proselytize.
I know, but my
So
question is,
I guess the answer would be yes. Do I feel the need to proselytize that coffee mugs exist?
I'm talking about deeply held
I-
beliefs.
they're-
Like,
It's a pretty deeply held belief that I have that coffee mugs exist.
I mean, like
You
God beliefs.
tell me coffee mugs don't exist, and everything has been turned upside down. See, look, if that doesn't exist, there's a problem.
Because
That's a deeply held.
like when it comes to God beliefs, like when I ask other belief systems, why should I believe in Jesus? Why should I believe in Allah? Why should I believe in Vishnu? Usually they have a reason for me.
Hindus don't necessarily. They have a similar issue that I do. There's not really a reward for believing.
But are
other
you
than-
saying you would have, if I was to ask you, why should I believe in Odin? Would you just say you shouldn't, or do you?
No,
what would you
I'd say you'd be better off, but I don't think that.
How would I be better off?
Well, I guess you could be better off in the same way without actually holding the belief. So I guess that doesn't really work.
All right, I'm going to answer Doug's question. So Doug's a fundamentalist. If you haven't figured that out, he switched
No,
from
I
fundamental.
know.
He switched from fundamental Christianity to fundamental atheism or agnosticism.
What kind of
or
Christian
whatever.
were you before this, Doug? What flavor?
That's a hard question to answer. I started out Mennonite, went to Pentecostal, went to non-denominational, seeker-sensitive, to Baptist for like a very small amount of time, to back to Mennonite, to Calvary Chapel, non-denominational, to Presbyterian, and then I was out.
I can see Presbyterian being the last stop.
Yeah.
My last stop was what is it? It's starts with an E.
Evangelical.
Episcopalian?
Episcopalian, that's what it is. Yeah. I was Episcopalian for like 3-4 years. And after that I was like, I became Celtic Christian actually for a little while. And then after that I became pagan. It gradually became more and more like nature worshipy.
But like in
But
this point,
Doug-
no, hang on, Leon.
But you went through like the charismatic stuff.
Yeah, that was when I was younger. That's the crazy
Okay.
phase. But
I was young. I hope there's no pictures.
I was
out there.
young and stupid, crying out in tongues.
He was.
Cam's
Let's hear
wife,
the Holy Spirit flow from your belly, Doug.
Ocean Cam's wife, can speak in tongues to this day, and she is no longer a believer. But what I was going to say is, I honestly don't feel any desire, whether a God belief is true or not, to even reap the benefits of that belief. Like, I don't feel I need Odin to become more intelligent or wise. I don't feel I need Jesus to become more compassionate or kind. I don't feel I need whatever. So when I ask believers why I should adhere to their religion, usually it comes down to carrots and sticks. But in your belief system, you don't have really carrots and sticks, right? You don't have heaven and hell.
What do you mean by carrots and sticks? Oh, you're talking about heaven and hell?
Rewards and punishments.
No, I think that like as far as the Norse afterlives, like Valhalla, or any of the others, you're going there if they exist. Let's for the sake of assuming whatever they exist. I think you'd be going there regardless of your belief system. I don't think belief in Odin is a prerequisite for going to Valhalla. I think being a great warrior is. So if you have a Muslim that dies on a battlefield but does so bravely, and the Valkyries choose him, goes to Valhalla as a Muslim.
And if he did,
What are your other options?
There's several. There's a farming one. There's the Helheim. Fraser's got one. There's an interesting. There's a lot.
I'm sorry,
of them.
farming for all of eternity. We just call that hell.
I think it's just the shit grows. I don't know. It was. I was reading like a list of them at one point. It was like, this is interesting, but I'm not really an afterlife guy, so I don't really care.
so when you say you don't care, does that mean you really don't believe it?
I don't know. I have no belief on the afterlife. It's like, it could be, it could not be. I'm agnostic on it.
Would Odin be agnostic about it?
You
I
see,
don't know.
Ocean, these street epistemologists get hung up on the theory, the philosophy, the reasons for belief. They poo-poo utility, and what
Right.
they're fallen. They are just depraved atheists who don't understand that.
Paul,
For most people, pray a little bit every day, go to a Bible study, worship at an altar. These are good things for the mind and the brain. They keep it clear. There are reasons to have bad beliefs, but oh no, you got to have a good reason for your belief. Otherwise, all this utility, it just doesn't matter.
Okay.
Do you have a reason why I should abandon the utility, Doug?
Utility in your case?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And Cam,
What
I'm
is
going to phrase this in a way that you'll be proud of me, Cam, because I'm trying to get your affection.
Use small words so we can understand you, Doug. Use very small words so Cam can understand you.
I was getting angry already. Fuck.
When you start practicing believing things without a good epistemology, you put yourself in danger of believing potentially dangerous things.
Sure.
So if you can believe things with using a good epistemology and having what I would deem as good reasons, repeatable reasons, verifiable reasons, and still get the same utility, I think you're better off.
I think that this is like, don't let your kids play outside because there might be dangerous things.
No, this is saying there are risks in life, and you make decisions to reduce risk, but you also make decisions to bring you pleasure, to bring happiness, to bring joy, fulfillment. But if what you're using to bring you joy and fulfillment is based on something that was arrived at for not so good reasons or through flawed epistemology, you might end up believing something that could later on hurt you in life.
Right. I'm still. Do you understand my analogy with the don't let your kids play outside thing?
I'll explain it to him because
Okay.
Doug understands quickly if you explain for a long time. Doug's a bit binary.
And Leon's good at explaining for a long time.
Doug's a bit binary. Doug's a bit black and white. And
Is he still in his
basically-
angry atheist phase, or is he?
No,
he's still there. I'm trying to get him out of it.
Okay.
I'm trying so hard to get him out of it.
All right.
I'm a teddy
But-
bear.
There's some, like, there's bureaucracy, and then there's sort of reason, common wisdom. And of course, nobody should own a barbecue because sometimes barbecues blow up. So if a barbecue blows up and one person dies, maybe none of us should have barbecues. That is a little bit of what Doug, I think, is saying is, but
Ocean is saying.
well, you guys, Ocean's on my side of the argument. Doug, you're like, but if something bad could happen from this epistemology, we shouldn't. And it's like, no, if we are reasonable, if we have some common wisdom, maybe some of our beliefs might not have the world's best epistemology. And if we admit that, but at the same time understand the utility of it, we're not, going to suddenly go and give money to the snake oil salesman, as long as, we're reasonable people with
People
a certain
do
amount.
give money to the snake oil
Yes,
salesman
Yeah,
people do.
all
But
the
those
time.
people have really bad epistemology. Like,
An example of a belief that has utility would be believing that the universe exists, but you can't prove it.
Yes.
You can't empirically.
That
give an
is my
example to it.
one and only unfalsifiable belief. That the universe
Okay.
exists.
Well, there's
That's
also
my,
that you're,
that's my
there's also that
presupposition.
you're conscious.
No, that entails the universe. That's basically the universe exists and has the properties it
consciousness
has.
doesn't entail the universe. Universe might entail the consciousness.
No, I believe that the universe exists, has the properties it has, including the fact that evolution.
The and you can
happened.
learn from it thing is what gets around like
Yes.
solipsism and stuff.
Yes, exactly. So
That's where you get the consciousness will get imported with saying and you can learn from it.
but
Leon, 2 or 3 assumptions.
I hear what you're saying with that,
But they have utility.
And I understood Ocean's point on that too. But it seems like when it comes to religious beliefs, it is the most problematic or the riskiest of belief systems out there. Like believing that your cup really exists.
But I'm dangerous, Doug. I'm a dangerous guy.
Because when people truly believe that they have a God behind them in their belief, the source of their belief is this real deity, as Hitchens says, it makes them do something crazy that any sane person wouldn't normally do.
Well, what crazy thing has Ocean done?
I'm not talking about Ocean.
I've done a lot of crazy things.
But who knows? Yeah, maybe he...
Right, and I'm not
maybe he has a
disagreeing with
body
you,
in
Doug.
his freezer
It's
right
a
now.
lot of drugs.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Doug, but you are arguing from both a fundamental mindset, but also about fundamentals. People who are fundamental.
Yes.
Because look at, there's still a third, Doug, 1/3 of scientists, I'm not talking elite scientists, people who get their income working in a lab as, just low-level lab people or a third of scientists still have a God belief. But it's probably a pretty damn liberal God belief. If you really poked at it, there's probably not a lot of good epistemological reasons. They just kind of believe it because they're not even inspecting it. They grew up with it, but they go along their daily lives and they're not going to get radicalized and use their science to blow shit up.
Well, but hang on. We don't know anything about Ocean, so let's ask him. Ocean.
We don't know anything about. Okay, I'm going to tell you what I know about Ocean already.
No,
he's got a beard. He's got a dope setup. Look at that microphone in that studio. If you're using an SLR as a webcam, that's pretty cool. So we do know some things about Ocean.
I'm a fucking nerd. That's why I'm using a DSLR as a webcam.
We know that he swears.
I think I know the answers to these questions, but I'm going to ask you anyhow, just to make sure.
Uh-oh.
Is there anything?
How old is the Earth? What shape is the Earth?
No.
I got a couple of my own.
I'm going
Earth
to the
is
more
flat. It's 6,000 years old, and it was created by
good answers. Those are the right answers.
Odin, is there anything in your God belief system? God's
Odin?
belief. Oh, sorry.
You're
Ocean.
calling me Odin now.
Ocean.
I mean, I get that. I don't know. Maybe I should just take an eye out or something.
Well, Ocean and Odin are similar. So, is there anything in your belief system that could potentially hurt your fellow man, your fellow comrade on this planet?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate? Like what?
There's
that you personally would do because of your belief.
It's not necessarily that I would do it because of my belief. Like, say, I might be more quick to defend myself in a way that might hurt somebody. Simply because of the belief system.
Okay, so
I think that there's a
guy.
It's a violent religion.
So what you're saying is that if a guy came up to you and you think he's going to do you harm, and if you had a weapon, you're more likely use that weapon to kill rather than to injure because of your God belief.
No, not necessarily that. I guess I'm maybe more likely to kill than others. I have no idea. I've never been in that situation. Usually in situations in which there's been a threat to my life in some way, I've been very good at de-escalating. But the calmness that I express, I feel, has to do with my spirituality. Because I think that I give reasons to my spirituality for this process, but I can see how somebody could get here without religion. But I've been in a few situations in which my life has been in serious danger, and I used calmness and de-escalating skills in order to get out of them. But if in the situation in which it comes down to fisticuffs, it's
the calmness that you used, was that in adherence to your God belief or in opposition to your God belief?
No, in adherence.
So if Odin
But
was
there's rules with as far as when you're going to get into a fight. You shouldn't get into a fight that you can't win. First off, so if somebody has a gun pointed at your face, example, you shouldn't get into a fight in that instance because you can't win. But if you're going to be getting into a fight and you have to get into a fight, then you should commit yourself to it.
But I'm trying to get at what your God belief actually, how it affects your actions in
These are things that you get from the Norse sagas of examples of people that go into these situations. The Jomsvikings, for example, were a mercenary group that would not get into an engagement without knowing they could be victorious, and they were very smart about which engagements they got into. And this is a saga about them. There's Ragnar Lothbrok, who's the series Vikings is made about.
But you said that your beliefs, your
There's
belief
stories around him as well.
can be violent.
Yes. Christianity has its own violence in it, but it's like we attack these people because God says so. In the Viking mythos, there's other reasons for this stuff. It's more about personal glory, rather than because God said you must do it.
But is there something in your God belief that would make you more likely to be violent?
It's more forgiving of violence than Christianity is.
Okay. Well, that's reassuring.
If Christianity's been used for violence, but I think it wasn't like the Crusades and such. But Jesus is not really a violent character. So I think that Christianity being used for violence has more to do with the culture of the people that were practicing Christianity rather than the religion itself.
But you know what I find interesting about you, Ocean? That when I want to talk to you about your God belief, you often bring up Christianity.
I know a lot about Christianity, and I'm familiar with my own belief system, and I know that other people are familiar with Christianity, so it's a good place to make a comparison.
I know, but I want to know about your God belief, and if you're not a Christian, it's like I can't help but think that part of your own belief.
How did I bring up Christianity here? I said it would be more likely for me to go to violence than say a Christian, as far as because of religion standpoint.
But then you talked about Jesus.
So a Christian might go to violence for reasons in the Old Testaments that are expressed, or maybe historical reasons from the Crusades and so on. Somebody who is of Asatru or Odinism might go to violence in a case of protecting themselves, their family, those they love, those kind of situations, rather than be a martyr like a Christian would.
I know, but it seems like often
when Jesus was a bitch to an Odinist.
But Ocean, when I'm talking to you about your God belief,
I'm going to take it and die.
When I talk to you about your God belief, it seems like you often bring up Christianity, and in this particular part of the conversation, I think what I'm saying is very true, because I asked you a specific question about your belief in Odin and your God belief and how it impacts your daily life, and it seems like you often revert it back to Christianity, and I understand why you did that, but
it's a familiarity point.
But
you don't want me to use familiarity points.
No. But it makes me believe that what you believe about Odin and other gods is almost as a rebellion against Christianity rather than a true belief about what you believe. It's almost like, I'm so sick and tired of the crap in Christianity. I'm going to take something that the Christians
I
hate.
got more that way after being a pagan for a little while, actually. For the most part, I don't have a problem with Christians or Christianity. The more that I learned about what Christianity did to paganism, though, the more frustrated I got with it. So that's kind of how I got here on that. Is I don't like Christianity. No, I don't like Islam either. I think I have more contempt for Islam than Christianity. But I was never Muslim. I'm not rebelling against anything.
I guess.
Am I able to ask a question, Doug?
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I able to ask a question which is a change of topic?
Sure.
No. I have some stuff on this topic. Can you put a pin in
Go
your
ahead,
question?
let's hear. Let's hear
Because
that.
So Doug, let's get back to utility. If we evolve,
Stop beating up on Doug.
well, but this
I think
is an
Cam wants to
interesting,
beat up on me.
because I don't think it's a good thing if you could magically disimbue, is that the right word? Disimbue people of their religious beliefs, even if their religious beliefs aren't perfectly epistemologically sound, if we have evolved to form community around shared belief. And you've heard me rant about this. Like,
Did you hear
there
my
are good.
question I asked Ocean?
Oh no, I understand.
No,
I'm
no,
going back. I'm rewinding like 30.
I asked him
minutes,
out of
but
100 people that he socializes with, how many of them share his God belief? And he said 2 or 3. So I basically am cutting
I
out
find
your.
community in that too. I mean, I know more than 2 or 3 other pagans. I also know more than 100 people.
Right,
But there's a group, a local group, for example, that I go to a pub with every once in a while. And it's got about 30 people or so.
Okay.
But I think, Doug, if you use a concept of human flourishing, if we could establish that humans flourish better with some kind of shared religious belief, and of course we'd want that to be the most benevolent, benign, unviolent as possible. But it does seem most humans, you keep saying atheists might be freaks of nature, but if most humans need religion just for their daily routine, in order to donate to charity, in order to do charitable works, like if if there are certain people who wouldn't do all those good things without religion, maybe railing against religion isn't the best course.
Ocean, do you have any diseases?
What do you mean?
Do you need your God belief to help you get through the day because of either a tragedy, an addiction? Do you have a disease?
No, I don't have anything like that.
So, Leon, what say you now?
I'm not speaking to Ocean. I'm speaking to it might be okay to have beliefs that might not be philosophically and epistemologically sound if those beliefs help people flourish.
I will say that it's as far as the utility, it's like the most common functionality of it is that it's definitely a good way. It helps deal with stress a lot. It's a good way of overcoming stress.
Yeah, Leon uses a cigar.
I think that my way's more healthy.
Probably.
I also meditate.
There you go.
Nicotine gum. Coffee.
Oh, I definitely use coffee.
Beer.
I'm a heavy coffee user.
Cam, what do you use to get rid of your stress? Oh, don't answer that. I think I know.
I fuck.
No, the clever answer was Holly. Cam has a question.
All right, what was your topic changing question?
Oh, we the last conversation you and I had, we left off at the discussion of the two bodies on the table.
Oh yeah,
and
that was really
green...
interesting. Your answer to that, the green and blue card. Yeah,
yeah. I
liked your answer a lot.
If you had thought about that more, or looked in more towards.
It's been a good little brain teaser for me a couple of times, but I haven't gotten to like a next step or anything.
Can you recap for our viewers?
So the question that I asked Cam was about the nature of consciousness. We were talking about dualism. But what I asked was if you assume for a moment that you can cut a brain completely in half and remove it, and you can still have a functional human being afterwards. If you can take that brain, cut it in half, remove it, and then put it into another body, and then you put 2 different color cards over the bodies, and you wake up, the person that went to sleep before this procedure which card would they see? And Cam was saying that they both would probably remember being put to sleep, but there would be different consciousnesses waking up, which I thought was an interesting way of addressing the answer, or of addressing the question, rather.
Well,
Yeah,
I do. There's a lot of science.
I use the
around.
You go.
Yeah, he
Leon.
used evidence of the
So
separating hemispheres.
Split personality has come out of vogue. They call it, I think, plural personalities now.
It wasn't a split personality thing. He was talking about procedures that exist now where you split the brain in two and you retain both hemispheres, and there seems to be evidence of two different consciousnesses that are cooperating.
And I do think our consciousness is fragile, and people with split personalities can have completely separate consciousnesses, experiences, even medical conditions. There are examples of people who in one personality have diabetes, like medical diabetes, and in a different personality they do not. So in one personality they don't need their insulin, in a different personality they do. So the consciousness obviously has a big influence over our physical bodies. But yeah, I mean, consciousness is the fascinating topic to talk about, because we take most of us take a single consciousness as ourselves, as that's who we are.
Right.
But it's so easily manipulated, it seems. Like your example of chopping a brain in half, you by now definition got two separate consciousnesses.
Mm-hmm. Right, and let's say that the original question was, you put your body to sleep, you remove the brain, put in another one, put a blue card over the original body and a green card over the other body, and then you wake up both. The person who went to sleep, when that person wakes up, what do they see? And Cam, I was in a hangout for a little while we went for about 3 hours on this topic, and Cam just gives an answer that works really well, and I was kind of pissed at him.
What was Cam's answer?
Cam's answer was that both consciousnesses would be altered, and they would probably both think of themselves as the one that went to sleep, but they would be waking up experiencing things a little bit differently, but both see different color cards. But they would be separate.
It's a
be able to
natural
communicate with one another.
consequence of both the empirical information we have about the brain and how it functions and how consciousness is impacted by changes in the brain, and also
that was the home run to your point, was that you had empirical data backing it up, and I was like, "Fuck, he has that! Goddamn!" I just talk about it as an experiment.
Well, Siamese or conjoined twins at the head, isn't that a real life example of what you're talking about?
It is kind of. I think that like people have to kind of munge it in their head a little bit to get it to fit the analogy. But I do think that there's a problem with dualist Christians, at least, where they believe that some kind of psychic soul element enters into conception at the moment of the combination of and I know that you probably don't believe that, Ocean, and I know that that's not what we were discussing, but yeah, I think Siamese twins is a good example for some kind of dualist Christians.
I believe the term you're looking for there is conjoined twins, you ignorant slut.
I said
yes,
conjoined.
That's true. Yeah. Siamese twins is not the right term. Apologies.
But Ocean, you believe Odin is non-material, don't you?
I've made arguments before that he's a disembodied mind, but I've also gone the other way.
You said you were
with it
agnostic, right?
Yeah. Ultimately, yes. But I think that for the sake of the philosophical debate route, I go with disembodied mind, because that's what a lot of the material is familiar with. But it could be the other way around. I don't know what evidence you would use, what way you would be, like what you would expect from either way, because there could be a material body, there could not be.
So why transition?
Yeah,
or something else that is like not of this universe, but might be considered a material, like, you know what I mean?
I'll make a very this is not I don't expect this to be a persuasive argument, but but if I were in your shoes and I were compelled by the reasons you apparently are, I would probably tend towards more the embodied mind side of things. I don't know quite how I would explain where Odin is embodied, like, where in the universe or, that kind of stuff. There would be questions about that. But the reason why is because I think that there's a struggle in dualism to really explain how it is that you can have a disembodied mind, especially on our background evidence when we have no good example of it. And so prior probability wise, like, if you're accepting that these gods exist and they have these certain powers, I would have thought that, like, given the fact that, like, we do have really strong examples of embodied minds, prior probability wise, that would be the better route to go.
I could agree with that. There's a couple of books that I'm working on that are actually around this subject, so I'll think about that while I'm going through.
What do you do for a living, Ocean?
I work in film.
Hence the gorgeous setup.
Right. No, I had an extra DSLR. That's what happened, is that I was like, I have this DSLR that I've kind of retired. What do I do with it? So I hooked it up to my computer.
So you're in front of the
I'm
camera?
wasting this lens. This is a Sigma 28 millimeter that I'm using. It's a nice lens for a DSLR, but it just sits next to my computer.
So you work behind the scenes for film?
Yeah.
Does the film usually have a soundtrack that goes boom chicka wow wow, boom chicka 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 boom chicka wow?
I don't know if even porn still uses that stuff.
You need to watch some new porn, Doug.
You're stuck in the 80s watching your porn, man. Watch some of the new stuff. No, I did work on a music video that had a lot of adult film stars in it, though, so that was good. But that's the closest I've ever gotten to porn. So I was producing a video, and I wasn't quite familiar with all of the talent, because the band was finding a lot of the talent, and there's this girl standing next to me as I'm organizing some of the people on the set, and there was a conversation was struck up about how this is kind of a not very normal day where I'm directing a bunch of women around the set, and they're all scantily clad, and there's a giant fire behind me, and she's like, well, next week I'm going to be down in Miami fucking 2 girls. I was like, okay, all right, your days are much more interesting than mine. But there's all kinds of weird stuff like that that's kind of in my life, so to speak. But as far as like most of the stuff that I do is commercials or music videos. I just got off of a feature a little while ago, independent science fiction. So,
any music videos we would have seen?
The one that I was talking about was one of the bigger bands that I've done. It's Combi Christ. They're called. They're a metal band.
A Christian?
They made no.
So Stroop in the comment threads just said that you produce GoPro MMA fighting in Norway set to black metal music, and I would watch that.
Well,
that sounds good.
It's funny because Combi Christ, the lead, is a Norwegian. He's sort of pagan. There's his name is Andy LaPlaga, and he's like this really, like, off the wall guy, and he's really neat. He's really fun to interact with. But he wears a Mjolnir as well and everything. So it was one of the reasons why I got called for that is that they wanted a lot of things that were very pagany in the production. So the director called me.
Pagany, is that a word?
Because I deal with that stuff. I guess it is now. I just made it.
What was the name of that band?
An adjective. Combi Christ.
Combi?
Combi.
Like combi van?
Christ. Like COMBI Combi Christ.
Oh, is it a
And-
play on Zombie Christ?
I guess I don't know exactly.
Never surrender. Get your body beat. Sent to destroy.
My Life, My Rules is the one that I did. It's
Oh,
black and white.
I found it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Here, I'll bring it up. Let me know if this is the one you worked on. Is that it?
You're covering. Yeah, that's it.
Whoa. I hope that's ketchup.
It was chocolate syrup. We went Hitchcock with it.
Are you in this one at all?
No. I try to make a point of not being in them. But
That's pretty cool.
a few of my friends were.
Like, I mean, I have no idea what I'm watching really, but it looks artistic.
There was snakes, bonfire altars. Filming the concert, like part of it was really cool too.
Yeah, the guys in chat can hear it too.
I can't hear it.
Yeah, you
No,
guys can't hear
I
it.
can't. I can't.
That's
hear it.
right. Oh, did we ever establish, like, do you actually have the same microphones?
I have a Yeti.
I have a Yeti.
Yeah.
My
We have
Yeti's,
microphones.
my Yeti's bigger than your Yeti, though, I think.
Now, they're both black and big, and
And we both know what you use them for, so it's...
Aren't they technically blue Yetis?
Yeah.
Mine's a blue Yeti, yeah. But I have to buy myself one of those vibration-free arms.
so yeah, it's a shock mount. It's made specifically for the Yeti,
How much
and
does
then
it
I've got a
cost?
scissor arm. This was I don't know how much this cost. I just bought it.
And then forgot.
Right. It was probably in the neighborhood of like $60.
And what country are you in?
America. I'm in the South.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm
I like
sorry
it.
too, dude.
Well, I'm in a very liberal city in the South, so
Atlanta?
Austin?
it's not. I'm in Atlanta. Yeah,
Ooh, I
I
guess.
work in film. I'm in the South. It's
Austin
Atlanta.
is not in the South. Austin is in Texas.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true.
Texas and the South really kind of dissemble one another, even if they both were on the Confederacy. But no, Texas is not the South. The similarity is that Texas does good barbecue. Tennessee also does good barbecue. But
So, Ocean, my wife is black. My kids are mixed.
right,
If we lived in Atlanta, would we have any problems?
probably not. My sister is black. So is two of my brothers. So yeah,
So,
they
are
seem
you
to get along.
black?
No.
I just want to make
In
sure.
case you couldn't fucking tell. I'm white as they come.
So, you were adopted?
No. There's a second marriage on my dad from my dad.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have a very multicultural family. My brother married a Hindu, and then I have two black brothers and a sister. So it's all over the place. I get into actually the side note about that's interesting is that Odinism, Asatru, heathenry, which all three of those names kind of deal with the same thing. There's a very strong stripe of white nationalism in it, and it's something that kind of frustrates me. So there's several groups of heathens, and they usually refer to themselves as Wotanism or Asatru, that believe that if that use the symbology in it as part
Wait a
of
minute.
white
Are you saying
nationalism.
there's a part of your Odin belief that espouses white supremacy?
There's nothing in the historical nature of it or the texts that gives credence to any of this.
Just of some
But
of
a
the
lot of
followers?
a lot of the, especially recent followers, come out of the alt-right, and it's been very interesting. There's a divide in Asatru over this issue, because a lot of them are like, it's a native European religion, and they're looking at it as a revival that's about like white displacement and these kind of things. But there's others that are like, no, from a historical perspective, the Vikings were raiding Britain and trading friendly with the Turks. What you're espousing about this system doesn't make any sense. And also, you didn't have to be from Scandinavia in order to be on the boats. There's evidence that there were from Asia and Africa that were on the boats.
Were you here the other day when I gave the Robin Hood morality test?
What's the Robin Hood morality test? No.
Oh, you're breaking
Probably
up.
Not.
You're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if you need to refresh.
Oh, no. Is this...
Is he breaking up for you guys?
Yeah, a little bit for me, but I wasn't sure if it was on my end or not.
Okay,
I can reload. Me too.
Well, just wait a bit. Just listen. I'm gonna read like a short paragraph. It's about Robin Hood, Maid Marian, Little John, and the sheriff. And I want you to rank.
Just a question first. You're familiar with the sort of background story of Robin Hood, right?
No, never heard of him.
I mean,
before.
not like intimately familiar, but you've like seen something about it.
Who's Robin Hood? Who's this guy?
He's being facetious. He knows Robin Hood. Everybody knows Robin
Yeah, I
Hood.
know who
Okay.
Robin Hood is.
Okay.
So the sheriff of
Well, I don't know. There were some facts that I wasn't quite sure on when I did this test.
I
But
probably am in that boat.
So
Where it's like, I know the general story, I guess, but
I'm going to read you this
Yeah.
little short paragraph, and then I want you to rank 4 characters in order from least moral to most moral. Okay. The sheriff of Nottingham.
I don't know them that well.
Well, no, hang on. The
you
sheriff.
get the story.
The sheriff of Nottingham captured Little John and Robin Hood and imprisoned them in a maximum security dungeon. Maid Marian begged the sheriff for their release, pleading her love for Robin. The sheriff agreed to release them only if Maid Marian spent the night with him. To this, she agreed. The next morning, the sheriff released the prisoners. Robin Hood at once demanded that Maid Marian tell him how she persuaded the sheriff to let them go free. Marian confessed the truth and was bewildered when Robin Hood abused her, called her a slut, and said that he would never want to see her again. At this, Little John defended Maid Marian, invited her to leave Sherwood Forest with him, and promised her lifelong devotion. Maid Marian accepted, and they rode away together. So now the question is, who do you think is the least moral of those 4? The sheriff, Maid Marian, Robin Hood, and Little John. Who do you think is most moral, least moral, and the 2 in between? Think
So
about it. Take your time.
what happens when I tell you that I'm a moral anti-realist?
You don't even have to use the word moral if you don't
Oh,
want.
please, don't perpetuate the stereotype that moral anti-realists are unable to rank things in terms
No.
of...
It's not. It's because I can rank them in terms of preference. But if you're asking me to rank them in terms of anything objective, then I'm going to be a bitch.
No, I'm just your preference.
Okay. You say not on my preference or just on my preference?
Just on your preference. I'm asking you.
All right. Well, I mean, Maid Marian kind of goes to the top
As most moral or least moral?
as most.
Okay.
Let's see. I guess second to Little John, and then I think that Robin Hood and Maid Marian or Robin Hood and the sheriff kind of tie.
No ties allowed.
That is the right answer, by the way.
No ties allowed.
No
though.
ties allowed.
Oh, well then Sheriff of Nottingham and then Robin Hood at the bottom.
Close. You're very close to the correct
I was
answer.
gonna say, you
Okay.
almost had the right answer.
Here's the reason why I do that.
He actually answered the same way as me.
So
No, he didn't.
the only action that Robin Hood does is abusive in this story. The sheriff of Nottingham does something that is also abusive, but he also owns up to a promise. Is there something that I'm missing?
No, there's no right answer. Leon and Cam are just.
So what's? Oh, okay.
But I'm going to psychoanalyze
you guys.
now.
You guys disagree with my answer, obviously. So.
No,
what's
Leon and I agree with each other, and me and Leon disagree with Doug. And Leon, you don't know this yet, but Holly agrees with you and I.
So
okay.
Doug, did you give my ranking?
My order was Little John, Maid Marian, Sheriff Robin Hood. So I agreed with you, except for the top two. I switched.
Okay.
And
you guys disagreed with me on the bottom two?
Yeah, they disagreed with you on the bottom two. But
okay.
this is you, Ocean.
Why did you put Little John above Maid Marian?
Because I view morality in terms of harm, and Little John did absolutely nothing harmful.
Neither did Maid Marian.
Well, no, she
bros before hoes. He totally hurt Robin Hood.
I'm a big justice guy, so Maid Marian interfered with the natural course of justice by offering an elected official or an appointed official bribe. But anyhow,
no, she agreed to a bribe. She didn't offer a bribe.
But she still interfered with justice.
I thought she offered it. Didn't she? Oh, no. She agreed to it.
She agreed to it, but she accepted, which is
but she's also put into a position in which she's being forced to, as far the problem that the appointed official is having is not the result of the request.
She allowed this whimsical thing called love to interfere with the justice system. That's what she did.
No, that's what the sheriff did.
No, but she accepted.
The sheriff let his lust interfere with the justice system because he accepted the idea. The idea of Robin Hood going free wasn't a problem for him. It was whether or not he could get something out of it.
But no, she went there.
Willing to give it up.
She went to the sheriff.
Yeah, she went to the sheriff to say, "Can you free him?" And
right.
He said, "Yes, if." So it was he didn't have a problem with Robin Hood going free. It was using it as a bartering tool.
But she knew what the sheriff would say because she knew she was hot.
Is that in the story?
No, I'm joking. But let me tell you exactly.
Now I want to know about why these guys think that.
No. Let me tell you, Ocean, who exactly you are.
Okay.
You are. Let me make sure I got it right. Yeah, you are
exactly.
You are essentially a content. You, Ocean, are essentially a content person, even if you consider yourself a little superior. You are moral by your own standards, for you believe that morality is what best suits the occasion. You are sexually uninhibited, more romantic than you may appear, and more dependent upon the approval of others that you care to admit.
Okay.
Nailed it.
More or less true, I guess, but I think this is one of those tests in which any answer stream that you read is going to appear as more or less true. It's one of the issues with these like pseudoscientific personality tests.
Well, let's try it. Okay, I'm just at random.
Astrology.
Go to another one.
Okay, so
this is very astrology. Yeah.
You are not living a happy life. The cause is within yourself. You are a rebel with a trace of spoiled child about you. You value truth above morality, but you are reasonably tolerant of those who disagree with you. Any problems you have are not likely to be centered in sex. So that's just a random one. I don't even know.
So right, that's a random one.
Now, does that apply
so
to you as well?
Here's the situation when that kind of happens. Let's say I disagree with that. Would it come off as me disagreeing with that because I'm in denial, or would it come off with me disagreeing with that because it's actually not the case?
I don't know. Only you could answer that.
Right. Well, I mean, like I'm asking about how it would come off. Like, so if I answered like the stream according to that, there may be a few things in here that are informative about morality.
I think there's some psychology going on here with how you answer these.
Yeah, it's like basic stuff.
Yeah,
but
they do seem to be not opposite answers, but they're different. But yeah, I switched the top two compared to you, and Cam and Leon switched the bottom two.
Why'd you guys switch the bottom two?
Intuitions come first, reasons come second. But I think essentially, the sheriff seems like a bad guy almost historically, like even before you read this specific scenario, I think most people almost think of the sheriff as being a bad guy. Whereas Robin Hood may have just acted like Robin Hood sort of just acted the way kind of a jealous douchebaggy kind of guy would
I have
react. Whereas
zero,
I'm not willing to
I
make
have
excuses.
I have zero
So.
tolerance for sexual coercion. That's pretty. The sheriff was
Cam, I
always,
thought I apologized for that already.
he was always going to the bottom immediately when he effectively coerced Maid Marian into sex based on her love for someone else.
Okay.
To me, that's like it's like one of the worst things that you can do. Well, it's not one of the worst. It's not the worst, but it's a very bad thing in my mind. Using a position of power
Right.
to
Yeah,
manipulate somebody into
I
sex.
see that, but do you remember the reason why I ranked him above Robin Hood is because there was, as far as number of actions, he actually went through on a promise. So there's I as far as like which one is the most moral, the only example of action that we have from Robin Hood is a negative action, whereas we have 2 actions from the sheriff.
Yeah, no,
One of
and I
which
do
is a really
understand
bad
that.
thing, and the other one is a positive.
It's a really good point, but I don't think going through on a promise bears out, or effectively.
I see how the weighting could. Yeah, I think that if maybe I thought about it a little bit more, I might agree with you on that. What's the description what's their description then, Doug? So it might be just in between these two or something.
we'd be Maid Marian,
Little John.
Robin
Maid Marian,
Hood.
Little John, Robin Hood, and then the sheriff.
What? Maid Marian, Little John. Where are you?
While he's looking this up, I started asking this question 20 years ago. And I asked it to my peer group at the time and was just shocked at their answers. And some of them put the sheriff at the top. And
Really?
Maid Marian at the bottom. And I was just like, fuck, who are you people?
Okay. We would expect you to be a happy, well-balanced person who likes people and is liked by others. You question whether many conventional views on morality are valid under all circumstances. Do we detect a sense of chivalry and idealism under the sophistication?
Okay, I can see that too. I think that either one of those, I would be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think this whole thing is just an internet astrology. It's a little slightly more
kind of astrology
example.
Putting Maid Marian at the bottom, that's interesting.
Well, Doug, do this. Go, what does it say about somebody? Let's do this ranking. I'm going to do an imaginary ranking. What if the sheriff is the most moral, and then Robin Hood, Little John, Maid Marian at the bottom? Because I think some of my friends
Gave that ranking.
Yeah, and I was like, how do you think? And again,
hey, Molly.
Who's Molly? Hi, Molly.
You said the sheriff, Robin Hood, Little John, and Maid Marian?
Yeah.
Although you make a brave show of being self-sufficient, beneath this you are unhappy and rather mixed up. You don't understand women. Probably you are afraid of them. You do not know
This is the answers for men.
Yeah, you do not know what love is, and you're more likely to boast about your conquests in a bar than prove them in a bedroom.
What does it say about women who answered that way? Are you really a woman?
If men are attracted to you at all, they probably are the wrong sort.
So there are some clear wrong answers in this little.
That's amazing.
See, that shows it's not quite astrology.
Yeah, I see.
No, this has.
It is a moral question, so I think there are like some conclusions from that, right?
Yeah, no, and to be blunt, I think some of those descriptions are different than others. Like a good astrology, like if you had 12 astrological paragraphs, they'd apply to everybody, no matter which one you picked. If you read it, everybody would say, "Oh yeah, that's
the
me."
Chinese years and all that stuff. Because like obviously I'm not the same as everybody else born in my year.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm asking Molly if she wants to come on for a bit. I don't want to stay on much longer, but if she wants to come on for a little bit, she can.
Who's Molly?
She's another pagan.
She's
She's a druid.
Druid, right?
Yeah.
What did she draw?
She drew it. I would like to see your drawings, Molly.
She says no, thank you.
I offended her a while back, I guess. It's too bad. Well, if Molly's not coming in,
I think pagans and atheists get on better than atheists and theists. Well, I mean monotheists.
No, I think that pagans and atheists get along better than pagans and monotheists.
That's true too. That's a good point. Yeah.
We tend to agree on a little bit more. So, like I said earlier that I have contempt for both Christianity and Islam. And those are like the two big monotheistic religions.
well, don't forget the Jews.
Jews are kind of like pagans, except they only have one God. I don't really, not really bothered by them.
Yeah, most
Because they don't believe in like this like infinite God, or that their God is the only one. They just think their God is the only one worth worshiping.
Yeah, and Judaism is probably, or to be a Jew means two things. It's almost like being a Mennonite. It's either religious or cultural.
Yeah.
I wonder what percentage of Jews are actually Orthodox.
Religious?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess you could run into some problems with a Jew because they think that a religious Jew would think that their God is the source of morality in some level, or that their God's moral commands are better or something. Also, that their God is the creator and the only creator. And that's kind of important, I guess.
It seems like I attract all the weird beliefs because I've talked to a Jew that believed that the Messiah had already come, and then
Messianic Jew?
No, not Jesus. There
was
a different Messiah.
A rabbi was explaining this to me. That there's actually several like mini messiahs. There's like the Messiah, and then there's
No.
Messiah.
I'm talking about the capital M Messiah, but it wasn't Jesus.
Okay.
So it's like a small fraction of the Jews out there, and then most of the Muslims I've talked to have been in a small cult called I forget the name of it.
Sufism?
Could be, but they also believe that there was some type of Messiah of some sort.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I could get you a Muslim that's a little bit more reasonable.
But the one Muslim I talked to a while back, he since deconverted. I'm not saying it was because of me, but
is that the one guy you had on like a little while ago?
Yeah.
Who is
He
that?
believed in a Messiah of some kind?
No, I'm talking about Khan. Remember?
Yeah, did he also believe in a Messiah at one point, or
he
did
was more regular.
Never
I think
did?
he was Sunni
okay,
or
more
Shia.
regular guy.
Yeah, but he, I had him on a long time ago, and
Probably Sunni.
then I did a video on embryology because he asked for it, and then other atheists were talking to him as well, and now he is not a Muslim anymore.
Be interesting to talk to.
Yeah, I don't know what part of the world he is in and how dangerous.
Is he in a part of the world where it was like it'd be an issue? Oh, okay. You don't know.
Yeah, I would have to get that fact first.
Right.
But you see, I'm not. How do I say this? I wouldn't say I'm happy for him because he left Islam. I'm happy for him that he raised doubt on a deeply held belief, God belief. And if that led him out of Islam, so be it. And I know Leon probably thinks I'm lying right now, but my battle is against fundamentalism. people who,
You're a self-hating fundamental.
because I used to be one, yeah.
Would you say that you like?
He's still in the angry atheist stage. Leon.
No.
No,
So he's angry
I don't
atheist
think
light.
Doug is like in the non-angry angry atheist stage.
I would agree with that. It's a very calm, angry atheist.
Passive aggressive? Is that what you're calling me? That was a
I've done
passive
the
aggressive way to call
reverse
me.
journey.
You're a
As
highly motivated, calm atheist.
Well, Leon thinks he's been saying for 2 years now that when is this going to fade away? And it's like
Do you know when it'll fade away, Doug?
No.
How long have you been an atheist?
Do you want the harsh truth?
2 years.
2 years? Okay.
Yeah. Yes, give me the harsh truth, Cam.
When your wife is no longer a Christian.
We're in for a long ride.
How does
Well,
that go? I've dated a Christian before. It's interesting.
So I will say, Doug, that it might be a harsh truth, but it's not totally true, because I was once in the same boat as you, and I'm not saying that I progressed through it through some, or that you should even change. I'm not even saying that, because do what you want, but I did get to a point where I stopped caring quite as much, and my caring for people on the outside about what they believed, the stopping of that also correlated with my care of whether or not my wife Holly was a Christian.
Okay, but why are you hanging around me so much?
That very well. But... What's that?
Why do you hang around with me so much then?
Is that hard to know? It's because I like you, Doug.
He's trying to slowly convince you into believing. I don't know.
No, but you, Cam, you realize my passion.
Cam actually believes in fairies.
Cam's using a manipulative device right now from the influence and nudge books. He's lying. He's lying to Doug in order to ingratiate himself so that he can change Doug's opinion on the multiverse interpretation of quantum mechanics.
I'm playing the long game for Everett. I'm playing the long game for many worlds. That's what.
No, Cam. You hang around me so much because you are passionate about epistemology, about believing things for good reasons, effective, repeatable type reasons,
Yeah.
and
well, not repeatable. I don't really care about that. I just care about whether or not people update their beliefs on each piece of unexpected evidence. That's all I really care about. It doesn't matter if it's repeatable.
And you see me preaching that gospel that's similar to your gospel that you don't call a gospel, but you do. And so you live vicariously through me.
I do.
Occam's razor, Cam just doesn't have many friends.
No, Leon, I mean, you're totally right. I don't.
Yeah.
That wasn't meant to be awkward, by the way.
Just please love me.
No. So, Doug, at one point in time, I was very concerned about what other people believed. I lost some of that concern, and with it, I also lost concern about what my wife believed. My wife changed her mind about things in a direction more towards me, and I don't know, maybe that gave me some freedom to care about other people again. Not quite sure.
Before your wife changed her mind, and if I was to have asked you, what is the % chance your wife is going to leave Christianity, what would you have said?
Sorry, say that again. Before I changed my mind.
Before she changed her mind,
Yeah.
what would you say the percentage was that she was going to leave Christianity? Percentage chance.
first of all, I'll go on the historical order. Before I changed my mind about whether or not I cared, or at least before I stopped caring, I would have said that the probability was very low. But after I stopped caring, I think it went up. Like, not directly, but I think our discussions became, like, our ability to talk was increased, our ability to, like, understand each other more increased, because our discussions never sort of started with the premise that either of us wanted to change each other's minds, and we were just sort of sharing our feelings and our thoughts. But to answer, prior to her changing her beliefs, I mean, it was a slow process, so I'd have to choose a point to judge it from. The probability went up and up and up over time as I saw small incremental changes. Like, there was a point in time where I first saw her consider an alternate explanation for something that she would usually use her theism to explain. And that was definitely increased. Like, pretty much, like, as soon as that happened, like, it increased my
See,
Do you remember the
probability
specific
estimate.
example? Was there a particular thing that?
Yeah, what was it? I mean, so one of the things it started with like beliefs like homeopathy and stuff like that. So she first saw an example of beliefs that she thought were false, but she saw other people believing they were true. And she saw, like, some of the issues in the way that they were thinking about it. And then the examples were around, like, her pastor. She had a miscarriage. My wife did, and her pastor had one explanation for it, and she had another. That was a very early example. Later, I mean, it probably too much personal detail, but yeah, there was sort of like a long chain of, but she eventually got to the point where she realized that you had to consider other explanations for things, and I think that it was pretty much all downhill from there.
yeah, I think it's almost, I think the chance of my wife leaving Christianity is almost lower than me going back to Christianity.
Jesus.
Literally.
That's pretty low.
Yeah.
All right, guys. It's almost shopping time.
You shop a lot.
You look really good tonight, Leon.
Boom.
Where are you
chicka,
at,
boom.
Leon? I'm seeing sunlight come through places.
Oh, I'm in Pakistan.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Cam.
What about me, Cam?
No comment. No, I'm just you always look good, Doug. You need a haircut, but
I'm going for the Billy Idol look, or the Sting look.
no, you look good, Doug. You always do.
As he drinks some more liquor. Okay,
Drinking
gentlemen.
beer to convince himself.
Sorry, Molly, that we're going so soon, and you just got here, and Gerald. But I think we're going to wrap it up. It's 2 a.m. where I am from, and it's what, 4 a.m. for you, Ocean?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, you're a trooper.
Jeez.
I'm impressed.
I'm crazy.
Have you got work tomorrow?
A little bit, not much.
A little bit. Okay. Do you have children?
No.
No. Okay. Well, that makes it better. It's 1 o'clock
Right.
where I am, or just about to turn 1 o'clock, and I have 3 children. So this is a good time for me to go to sleep.
Time to go to bed.
All right, good night, all.